And welcome, everyone, to another 1UP XP Show podcast. Today, we are getting back on the college side of things when it comes to collegiate esports, and we are heading down to the Grand Rapids area. There's a few schools down there that we haven't been to yet when we talk about esports, their programs, and up-and-coming programs or already established programs. And today, we got one that is up-and-coming, and we're going to be looking at everything they have to offer, talk esports with their coach, and we're going to be talking about essentially everything under the sun when it comes to video games. And this one comes highly recommended once again. See, we're getting into these coaches who highly recommend all these coaches around Michigan. And we're going to continue to hang around and check out all these campuses and all these coaches and programs. But first, we got to get to that intro. Here we go. The good 1UP XP Show intro with 8-bit me running around the screen. We bring in Christopher Bilski from Grand Valley State, the head of esports there, up-and-coming program. Sir, thank you for joining me. Again, like I said, highly recommended from other coaches who we've had on the show. Thanks for taking the time and talking to me, man.
Hey, I'm excited to be here. Excited to talk about all things esports, Grand Valley State University. Excited to get to it.
Go Lakers! Woo! I actually just drove by campus Saturday, actually. We were down in Grand Rapids. My buddy is lead singer of the Spill Canvas. They were in town for their first tour off COVID. And I was driving by, and I was like, hey, look, there's Grand Valley. Because you never really know where directly campus is. Because campus is also just outside of town, correct?
Yeah, so the main campus is
right.
Probably like 10 minutes outside of downtown.
Right.
But we also have a huge downtown campus as well as, and then we have other buildings near the Medical Mile.
Right.
We're deeply ingrained in kind of Grand Rapids as a whole.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, when you hear Grand Rapids, especially for me growing up, I always thought Grand Valley. Grand Valley was always what came to mind. And then people would go to, Aquinas or, Davenport, these other colleges around the Grand Rapids area. And I never equated those with Grand Rapids because there's Grand Valley. So you'd always take Grand and Grand. And I was like, that's always what I think of when I hear Grand Rapids is Grand Valley. So we're glad to have you on the show, up-and-coming program. First of all, before we get started talking about the program and you getting into Grand Valley, let's talk about you, where it started, what made you pursue esports, what got you into gaming. Also, you played traditional sports as well. So let's start all the way back. Let's talk about little Christopher and gaming and what got us to where you're at now.
So, I've been gaming for as long as I can remember. One of my favorite Christmas items I've ever got was, the Game Boy Color.
Yep.
Got Pokemon Yellow in that. And I think that was kind of where it really took off for me, getting a PC a few years later as well and having the opportunity to do that. But yeah, I've been gaming for as long as I can remember. It's something that I've always had this passion and excitement about. And then, as you mentioned, I also played traditional sports. So
right.
I played hockey all the way through college. And even though when I was in college, esports wasn't a thing,
right?
I was a little bit older, but esports is really kind of at that intersection of my love of gaming with competition.
Exactly.
So it's where the two kind of coincide and collide, and that's really what drew me to esports.
That is exactly kind of how it did with me too. I played college hockey and baseball. Where'd you play hockey? College hockey?
So I played at Alma College. They had a club team.
Oh yeah, got you. That's right. You did tell me that. So I had some friends that played at Alma. I had some friends that played at Davenport as well. I went the NCAA D3 route, which is very similar to a lot of club teams across the country. Club hockey is very good hockey, and what I found out through college hockey is the ranks really don't mean much. Once you're at a really good D1 team, like they have fifth gear and sixth gear that is a little bit different. But a lot of club teams and D3 teams are very similar and very, they'll go toe to toe. But yeah, that was what I always equated to. I was too old to even think video games in college. That wasn't an option. So I went the weather route because I wanted to be a meteorologist. But we did play competitively in college in the fashion that, the old school way. We would sit down, play each other, but that's where that competition stemmed from. We would have teammates, playing all night, playing baseball or hockey or Halo or
Right.
Call of Duty. So I mean, we were always up there with that competition, and I definitely take it from that. It stems from that traditional sports aspect of it because we want to see who's going to be the last one standing. That's just the way it
100%.
goes. So let's talk about some of the achievements in esports that you have and some of the mentors that you have. So you went to school, you graduated. How did you get into the whole collegiate esports aspect of it?
So I guess to go back, so I ended college in 2013.
Okay,
And, collegiate esports, I really look at kind of the start as like 2013, 2014 with like
right.
the UC Irvines and the Robert
Robert
Morrises of the
Morris's.
world,
Yeah.
the Carl Leones of the world coming into the scene. But, I got out of college, got a regular job.
Mhm.
I did a few different things for a while. I hit like 24, 25 years old and I was like, man, what do I really want to do with my life? Like
Mhm.
what am I passionate about? What excites me? I had a great job at the time, decent pay, everything that came with it, good place to work for, but it wasn't what I was passionate about.
Right.
And so I sat down and I thought to myself, where is that at? And esports was the answer that I came up with.
Right.
And so, I started working, I worked as a journalist for years, but as I got deeper and deeper into the esports industry, collegiate esports really stood out to me as a place where I felt that my personality, my experiences, me as a person really fit the best. It's an opportunity to help teach, because I always look at esports as just kind of another classroom, but
Right.
opportunity to teach and have an impact on students. And there's that competitive net aspect. I've always been a big fan of college sports, whether it's hockey or football or whatever that might be. But yeah, I started my collegiate coaching career with Aquinas. So Adam and Carl were both there at that time as
Yep.
well. Moved to a director role at Muskingum University,
Mhm.
which is in Southeast Ohio.
Yep.
And then, I grew up in the Grand Rapids area. I'm from Lowell.
Okay.
So just little outside of Grand Rapids. So when the Grand Valley position came available, you talk about those kind of destination places for
Right.
you, right? Like as a coach, hey, where would I want to end up? And Grand Valley was always that place.
Yeah.
I grew up here, like you said, you can't be around downtown Grand Rapids without seeing Grand Valley's name somewhere.
Yep.
And, it's a cool opportunity for me because, not only can I have an impact on the students on campus, but because Grand Valley is so ingrained in West Michigan as a whole, I can impact the community
Oh yeah.
outside of just campus.
And when you think of Grand Rapids is an up and coming town. Like even when I was a kid, it was a bigger city, but now it's flourishing into something that it wasn't when I was a kid. Probably not so much when you were a kid. But video games are huge down there. You have a lot of kids that spend a lot of time with video games, and there are some amazing places in Grand Rapids where video games are options. I
Right.
always go to the bar that has the pyramid scheme that has all the pinball machines and all the craft brews in there. We went there once and I was in heaven. I was like, give me all the quarters. I need to play every pinball machine in this place. Like it just goes hand in hand. And Grand Rapids to me is a great fit for anything video games. Like the WAC conference tournament was this weekend in Grand Rapids as well.
Right.
And I saw that they held everything at Aquinas. So I mean, I feel like Grand Rapids is the best spot in Western Michigan when it comes to like the mecca of video games.
And
It just the east side you got Detroit and Ann Arbor, Auburn Hills, but like over here, Grand Rapids is that spot.
we have so many nice things about Grand Rapids as a city. I kind of took me leaving Grand Rapids and traveling a bit to
Right.
really appreciate it.
Yeah.
But yeah, from like an infrastructure and just a location perspective, we have a lot of different venues and places around Grand
Yeah.
Rapids that really lend themselves to this esports and gaming culture. And then from a geography standpoint, I mean, we're 2 hours from Detroit, we're
Yep.
2 hours from Chicago, we're 4 hours from Indianapolis. We're pretty centrally located in the Midwest, where that if we have events in Grand Rapids, it's going to be accessible to a lot of different programs.
And you're only 80 miles from here where I'm at in Cadillac, and it's another 100 miles from Traverse City. So
Right.
yeah, you guys aren't far from all of these areas. So I mean, it is a big draw. And when you say like for when I was a kid, Grand Rapids didn't have nearly as many draws as they do now. They have a lot more events. They have a lot more things that cater to everybody, and it's all in that one area. And then of course you have the little places around Grand Rapids that are also great destinations. So you have the pick of the crop down there when it comes to Grand Rapids.
Well, and it's the second largest city in Michigan.
Yeah.
but it doesn't necessarily feel like,
No.
this big city, right?
Right.
It also keeps a lot of that kind of smaller town or mid-sized town charm
Correct.
and kind of the niceties that go with it while having all of the things that a larger city would have.
And I've always said that because with me being in the TV industry, I was like, if I do leave 9 and 10 at any point, or Cadillac, which I never have plans of doing, but I was like, the biggest city that I would want to be a market in would be Grand Rapids because it doesn't have that big city feel.
Yeah.
The thing that I equate it to is something like Milwaukee or even in a sense Minneapolis, St. Paul, because Minneapolis, St. Paul doesn't feel like a large city. It feels more like that Midwestern kind of, like Grand Rapids.
Right.
Whereas like you get in Detroit, I'm overwhelmed sometimes when I go to Detroit because Detroit, that's not where I'm from. I'm from small town up north. So you get Detroit, you're like, you're checking all your windows all the time just to make sure there's not another car speeding up on your left or your right. And you just get overwhelmed in senses. Once you get used to it, it's not bad. But Grand Rapids, I've never felt that. Grand Rapids was always, I was like, oh, cool. We're in a bigger city that's just south of me. And I feel like maybe Big Rapids kind of helps plateau that a little bit because you get to Big Rapids, like, oh, okay, a bigger city. Then you get to Grand Rapids, like, oh, okay, here's a city I like a little more. So don't worry, Big Rapids. I still like you. I still love Ferris. But let's talk about take a step back. You said you were at a college in Ohio, and I'm not going to even try to butcher the name because I still don't even know how to say it. But let's go back to that. That was your first head position. Let's talk about your time there. You were there for 2 years, right?
Yeah, year and a half, 2 years there. So I was the director of esports at Muskingum University,
okay,
which is a Division III school in Southeast Ohio. And I had a fantastic time there. We took a program that had about 13 students, and when I left, we had 65. So we were actually the second largest team on campus when I left, which to me, we recruited quite a few people there, but there's also a lot of natural growth.
Yeah.
I always said that, we had good results on the field, but more importantly, I felt like we were having good results off the field. And we were building a program that people wanted to be a part of.
Right.
So, it was really exciting. We had great support from the university. We won a few championships. We won a championship in Fortnite. We won one in Madden as well when we were down there.
That's awesome.
But yeah, we were a varsity program, part of the athletic department there. And
even better because that gives you everything under the athletic department wing, man.
Yeah, it was exciting to be under athletics, like you said. I think it helped provide, just other resources and things for the students as well. But yeah, it was exciting. We had 7 different games that we competed in there: League of Legends, Overwatch, Rocket League, Valorant, Fortnite, Madden, and Rainbow Six Siege.
And like you said, you had a lot of success, not only on the field, but also off the field. And I think that's overall the goal for any esports coach. You want to take these kids, you want them to be successful at what they're doing, they're athletic, and then you also want them to be successful in school and off, the computer or console or field, if you want to call it that. But yeah, you literally set up a program and it was perfect, great in many fashions. But like you said, there's always kind of like a spot that you want to be. Fast forward, Grand Valley opens up. You're just now getting in, setting things up. What are we looking at Grand Valley? Obviously, you guys had a club team, or there was a club team there before, not really, organization wise, recognized, if you will, by Grand Valley. But what do you have coming up here with Grand Valley now?
So yeah, you were right about Muskingum that, it was extremely difficult to leave.
Oh yeah.
Things were going so well there. I loved the students. I loved the location. The people there were fantastic. But yeah, when the Grand Valley opportunity came up, and Grand Rapids being my hometown, it just was something that I felt like I couldn't pass up on. So to kind of talk a little bit about what we're building at Grand Valley, I kind of call it a 3-tiered kind of esports program, or 3 pillars of esports, which is 1, campus. So things that we're doing, campus events, open to campus community as a whole. 2, which is the student club. And then 3, we're building out competitive.
Mm-hmm.
So those are kind of the 3 different sections that we're building out here on campus. Student club on campus is massive. They have plenty of different games, pretty much any game you could think of. They have people there playing. And we've started doing more campus events. Like we just had a League of Legends watch party for campus as a whole. And then on the competitive side, we're building what that might look like. So we're hopeful that that's something that starts up very soon. Nothing official or pen to paper yet, but we're building out what competitive teams look like for us at Grand Valley.
And that you got to start somewhere, right? And when there's obviously interest there, because they said, hey, we have this position, and they know what you're capable of. You know, they know what you did down in Ohio, and it's very similar to Adam's situation. Adam had something at Aquinas that he built and put in, all of his love and attention into, and it was, and still is, a very good program. But he had to make a hard decision. Hey, this probably is not where I want to be right now. I got to go down to Florida Southern, And it's the same with you. You had something that is, some may say, you have the world in your hands there, but, at the same time, it's not exactly everything that is the end all be all for you.
Right.
And what I've noticed with esports is the very, very creative minds. They don't just stay somewhere and stay put. And, I should say there's a very small percentage of people who stay put and continue to build and continue a legacy. I say that because Haskell's probably the number one. He's been at Boise for 100 years. We all know this. But, there's others that are building and then continue to hop, build here and continue to hop and build here. And they're building stuff different at each program, but they're doing it in a very unique, very creative way. And they're seeing growth every time they move on, which is, I think for the esports community, one reason why people like Adam were up for the Ambassador of the Year award, because he's doing that in a different fashion to so many people and to different states. Michigan, we're lucky to be a hub, whereas, you've taken what you've known from Ohio to Grand Valley, and it's going to be, I'm not lying when I say this, your Grand Valley situation is going to blow up and it's going to be phenomenal. Like you said, or like I think you said to me in our meeting prior to, there's a lot of interest at Grand Valley from the students to even higher ups. So that is not going to be, I think, an issue when it comes to Grand Valley. So let's get into some of the questions here. Esports, you and I, we know is rapidly growing. We've seen it from its, I guess, baking stage, if you will, not even its infancy. But with the numerous programs now on the rise, what do you have to do to stay ahead of the others? Like, don't give away all your secrets at Grand Valley, but what do you have plans of coming into Grand Valley that are going to put you one step ahead of, say, like Aquinas or Davenport? Why should kids choose you over the other colleges in the area?
I'm always a person that says, look inward versus looking outward.
Right.
A lot of times, one of the big sayings that if you talk to my students, Coach Bilski-ism is control the controllables, right?
Right.
So when I look at what other programs are doing and things like that, I look at them more for maybe inspiration versus comparison. And I try really hard to focus on what Grand Valley's doing and what we can be doing better. For me, one of my big things is coming here to Grand Valley is that community focus. We're uniquely positioned, like you said, that, the Grand Valley State University name carries a lot of weight. Right. In West Michigan and beyond, right? So I have the opportunity to help impact and shape what esports looks like in West Michigan as a whole. So that's one of the things I've really been focusing on here in my first few months is that, I'm looking to try to help build out events and tournaments and create LAN opportunities and competition in the West Michigan area that Grand Valley can be a big part of.
And I mean, you hit it on the head. I mean, when you talk about community, especially in the Grand Rapids area, there's something special about those kids that, and with Grand Valley in general, like you said, there's a certain weight to it. And I really think, especially for me, when we were in high school, I'm trying to put this as politely as I can. A lot of kids were always saying, I'm going to Grand Valley, I'm going to Grand Rapids, I'm leaving town, I'm never coming back. And I talked at length about this with Jordan Sherman from Immortals. He's like, you have to be here or be from here to understand the culture. And a lot of the culture thinks you have to leave the area to be or to succeed or to get what you need ahead of everybody. You don't have to do that. For me, so much or more in Cadillac, people felt you had to leave Cadillac to get what you wanted and get ahead in life. And one thing that was always offered was Grand Valley. Offered you into Grand Rapids, offered a great education, and then offered things beyond college. And that is a huge thing that I think that Grand Valley has to offer. You are coming from the UP, the tip of the mitt, Northern Lower, wherever it is. You're going to a bigger city. You're going to have that experience. You're also going to have a great education. And then, with it, you're in Grand Rapids. So you're away from, you might be 2 to 6 hours away from home, but you're away from home and you're learning a little bit. So I always felt that was a big thing with Grand Valley.
And to your point, I mean, Grand Valley, I think, is the third largest school in Michigan. So we have a lot of opportunities for students, and we can offer a lot of things that maybe smaller universities couldn't. But
Correct.
at the same time, our average class size, I think, is like 15 to 17 students. So
Right.
you still get that kind of personal attention
Hmm.
at Grand Valley. You're at a big school that has all the nice things that a big school has, but you're still getting kind of that small town feel, which I guess in a lot of ways mirrors Grand Rapids, just like we said, right? You're getting a lot of the advantages of a big city while still getting that smaller city feel.
Right. And I mean, you hit it right on the head. And I feel like you guys being in Grand Valley, you have, many different options that some don't. But excuse me. What makes Grand Valley State stand out from the rest of the GR scene? Now, when I say the GR scene, obviously you have a lot of collegiate programs around the area. But in general, with esports being new and with Grand Rapids being, really flourishing at the moment, what makes Grand Valley stand out to the Grand Rapids area or just the scene in general?
I think right now, I mean, the I guess the most obvious one for me, or the easiest one, is our facility.
Right.
We have a brand new Laker Esports Center that literally has the best you can buy of everything. We have top of the line computers, Alienwares with 3080s in them. Herman Miller chairs, which if you've never sat in, are the most
Yeah.
comfortable chair you'll possibly own. Everything that we've had and built into our facility, we really wanted to make sure we were offering the best of the best to students. And so I'm really proud of our facility. It's a fantastic addition to campus. What's cool is, it's open to everybody. Right?
Right.
There's times that the student club's in there, but there's times that, students can just walk in and hop on a computer. So I would say just in the, separating ourselves from the Grand Rapids area as a whole, I definitely would put our facility at the top of the list.
And that's huge. Like you mentioned, having a facility on campus is something different, and not every campus has that. That is something that's still to this day rather new. Is not everybody has those state of the art, really nice labs that you can go down and just let loose and compete in. But yeah, Grand Valley, like you were telling me before, all the computers have 3080s in them. Like I
Yeah.
can't get my hand on one, and it's still a year after the fact. But yeah, I mean the Herman Miller chairs, man. I mean, woo! You want to talk a chair? You will be sitting correctly for the rest of your life after sitting in one of those chairs. So yeah, I hear you on that one. But that is cool. I love the fact that you're seeing money put into the correct things for the correct items rather than just saying, "Puh, there you go, there it is." I was like, this isn't what I envisioned
Right.
by any means. So you do have the luxury or the powers above you are seeing, yeah, let's make it correctly. Let's not just dump something that isn't going to be beneficial to anybody. Because I've seen mistakes like that, and it's not good.
And we want students to be able to feel like they can compete at the highest level, right?
Right? Yeah.
240 hertz monitors,
Exactly. You
the
got to have
display.
the frames, man.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't want anything to hold our students back, right? We
No.
believe in our students. We want them
Yeah.
to be successful, right? We're going to give you all the tools you might possibly need to be at your best.
And I love it. And a lot of people will yell at me, "Oh, you can't tell the difference." You can tell the difference. When you have gamed as long on 30 frames as I have, you get to 60, you're like, "Oh, that's smooth." You get to 240, you're like, "Wow, what am I looking at?" Like, there's a huge difference. So to compete on 240 is way different than 30. And if you don't believe me, try gaming on a CRT TV at 30 frames and then go to a 240 monitor and try gaming night and day. And take off motion blur and take off all that other crap because it just makes the game way better when you are gaming at 240 hertz. Or you could be Booga and game at like 360 hertz or whatever his monitor is
Right.
now, which I can't even achieve 360 frames, but that'd be cool. What is your personal goal for the students? We talked about you have in Ohio, you had, good competition, great outcomes, but also you had great outcomes in the classroom and off the field, if you will, out of the lab. But what is your goal, personal goal for the students?
So I always say that success to me is graduation. Ultimately, you're at college to get your degree, and the biggest win that you'll ever have, the greatest championship, is getting that degree at the end of your time here.
Right.
And so I really truly believe that when it comes to my students. But for me, I think the esports program is an opportunity for connection. I look at it as a way that, rather than gaming behind a screen, you can game side by side with people who have the same passions and the same interests that you do. And you can forge relationships with those people
Oh yeah.
that you're going to have for the rest of your life. You know, it's a place where somebody can walk in and maybe they're new to campus or new to gaming, but they can instantly feel like they belong because there are a lot of people there that are interested in the same things you are. And, you know, at that same time, whether you realize it or not, being a part of an esports program, you're helping to build soft skills like communication and how to be a good teammate and how to take feedback. And you're also, you know, I'd like to use our esports program to help you build career skills.
Correct.
You know, there's so many things that are parts of an esports program, whether it's graphic design or broadcasting or, you know, sponsorship sales, things like that. All of these things that are tied into your esports program, we can help you to build out your portfolio and build out your resume so that when you leave here and look for that job, you've already had real life experience
Yep.
to help set you apart of those other candidates.
And I don't think many kids understand, because when you're playing a video game, you don't think about the soft skills. You don't think about what you're doing or building. But the thing is, I cannot tell this enough, is when I did start competing at a high level and communicating and, maneuvering, flanking, just building and communicating skills with a team, like
Yeah.
it changes the social aspect outside of the room that you're in. Like, as soon as you go to the store or as soon as you're working with people or whatever it is, you start tuning into those skills that you've been using for that competitive gaming. Like the soft skills people just throw under the bus or don't pay attention to, but you don't understand how much communicating and figuring out in a snap of a second and how to get the, step up on whoever you're competing against. Those skills will help you outside of video games. People don't understand that in many facets.
I preach that all the time. You know, when you leave my esports program, me teaching you how to run an objective play in League of Legends, it's not going to matter
No.
really for the rest of your life. But what will matter is that you learned how to be a good teammate and
Yeah.
work as part of a team towards a common goal. The soft skills and the career building skills that you get as part of the programs, that's what's going to be important for you after you walk out the door.
Correct.
You know, knowing how to run high level strategies and Overwatch or League of Legends, or you know what the best meta is right now for that stuff's unimportant. What's really important is helping to build you as an individual,
Right.
so that because that's what you'll carry with you.
Yeah. And there's just so much of it. I'm sorry, I just caught sirens. I was like, I didn't know what that high pitched noise was out my window. I was like, my dog's all right. But yeah, but those skills are just numerous. There's so many of them that people just and even the players, you don't see it until you're out in the real world, and then you'll be like, oh wow, I use that same version or skill, if you will, back when I was gaming, and it's numerous, and I've talked at length's end with Carl and Adam and pretty much every coach that I've sat down here. They're just like, yeah, those are the big skills that people just don't realize that are huge when it comes to esports and gaming in general. And not to mention what else they can learn, like you said, marketing skills, social media skills, like people who want to broadcast, like all the other things that go under the umbrella of esports, because there's a million different things.
Yep.
All of that is learned, within an esports program. But even if you don't go into that field, you're still going to be using those valuable lessons that you've learned in that field down the road. It's like, yeah, I am not going to be putting pen on the paper when I'm doing a forecast and doing the long-handed math. Of course, I'm not going to be doing that. But knowing it and knowing the concept of it and how to do it, that's important. But guess what? I'm not going to use that in everyday life. But all the other classes that I took that I didn't think would be important for meteorology, guess what? Those are coming back saying, hey, look, the way you approach this, the way that you deliver this, the way that you speak, that is all important rather than, writing out 5 pages of math problems. So I understand all of it, and I applaud you for getting those skills out and opening eyeballs to those skills, because they're not easy.
I think that a lot of those skills, are not esports specific, right? Like
No.
you and I both played traditional sports.
Yeah.
And we're building those same skills from being a part of a team, right?
Correct.
And what's exciting about esports is that it's provided the opportunity in a lot of ways to capture populations that may not have been students who were participating in other athletic teams before, right?
100%.
So you're reaching a community and a population that you can really make a difference in, and provide these spaces and these opportunities to help build those skills that might not otherwise happen.
Yeah, that is also another thing that we always talk about is, you're 100% correct because when you look at you and I, we were traditional sport athletes. From a young age, we had the problem solving, the team building, the communication. Like unless you played a solo sport, you were always tied to another social aspect, and we had that growing up. Now,
Yep.
fast forward, even then, there was kids that probably weren't in traditional sports. They didn't have outlets other than going home, maybe playing some video games or just going home reading a book, whatever it is. They didn't have that social aspect. And now there's another huge umbrella because a lot of people still to this day don't understand how many people play video games. A lot of people play video games. So when you open that door for those kids to be an athlete in video games, you're now tapping into that pool of people who didn't have those opportunities, most opportunities in high school, because now esports are
Right.
popping up in high school, so they're getting that opportunity. But a lot of those are student driven. For the most part, students started that because there was a
Yep.
teacher who either played games or is interested in esports and like, yeah, let's try this out. And then they see schools higher up see, oh, you're taking this group of kids who may not have anything after school or might be in more trouble if they didn't have this. Let's try this out. And then they're seeing, yeah, it works in their favor. I was just like, where has this been the last 20 years? I
Right.
understand games have come a long way, but I was just like, the kind of isolation of programs was either you had, the arts, theater, or traditional sports. There was nothing other than that, in a lot of high schools when I was growing up. There wasn't much other than that. You were in a band, you played video games, or like it just wasn't an option. And that leads me into the next question is, does it shock you that we are here now with esports? Does it shock you?
I've worked in it for a while, so I don't know if shocking is the right word,
Right.
but to me, it's exciting.
It
When I
really is.
started this journey, 5 or 6 years ago, it wasn't even close to where it was now, right?
Right.
But I kind of understood that the passion was there, right, and the demand for esports, I just saw it exploding.
Right.
And so I was confident that, if I continued down this path, I knew I was passionate about it, and I knew that there were other people like me that were feeling the same kind of way.
It,
I think for me, it's very kind of a cool thing that I'm helping to provide opportunities to students that I never had.
right.
So, we talk about, I was out of college before Carl went to college, right?
Right.
So it was like, yeah, I would have loved to have been a varsity League of Legends athlete. That would
right.
have been a really cool opportunity to represent the school and do all of those things. But I think in a way it makes me appreciate it more that I didn't have those opportunities. I think it's such a cool thing, and I understand like what it would have meant to me,
Right.
to these students. And yeah, also I think growing up and kind of getting in at the early time of esports, we all struggled a little bit too. Most of us took unpaid opportunities
Right.
in the beginning, right? We worked long hours and did a lot of extra things on the side. And so I think it's cool that you went through the struggle to get to where we are today.
Yeah. And I mean, you're 100% correct. And it's not shocking. I think the bigger shock to me is that people don't, they think it's a niche. They think it's like, this is going to last a few years and be gone. This isn't a 3D television. This isn't,
Right.
something that's just up. And you have to remember, video games have been around since the late 60s, early 70s. Yeah, it was Pong, but still, that was a video game. And look at even
Right.
when Pong was around, you competed your little heart till it could not compete anymore to beat grandma or dad or your sister with two paddles and a little ball. Like, and even go back to the 20s, 30s, 40s, tabletop games. Like, grandma was throwing punches because, she had an extra $50 from the bank in Monopoly. Like, that is the competition. And when you can form it and bring it to people in the way of video games, this isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Video games are here to stay and will not go anywhere. Yeah, how they're delivered and, the small, minute things are going to be different. How they're licensed, how they can be used, that'll be different. But the actual, footing of video games isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So when you can play it online and you can make it competitive, that is a sport. We're now getting to the point where this is just starting to boom at the college level. It'll boom here in the next few years. I guarantee you in the high school level, some will say it already is. The pro scene, I think, will be something that, again, will be slow getting to America. Just because, when you look at the world right now, what was it? They had 75 million viewers, peak viewers for the Worlds with League of Legends. This was 2 weeks ago. I can't remember. The number was 76 million viewers at peak. 76 million people. 76 million watched an esport event.
Right.
That is a ton of people. And when you equate that to what we watch here in America, that's like Super Bowl numbers. And that's unheard of. Like, that's wild.
So Nielsen, who does like TV ratings,
Yeah.
came out and said that like among young adult males, I believe it was, that the most watched professional sports leagues, it was number 1 was the NFL.
Right.
Number 2 was the NBA. Number 3 was esports. Right? It was even ahead of Major League Baseball, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, in a lot of ways, that's just only going to continue to grow as that audience and fan base continues to mature. And I think, outside of just the esports, I think that's just one branch of the tree, right? You look at academically, gamification of a lot of academic pursuits is something that's been steadily on the rise as well. And things that I always point to Minecraft, right?
Right.
Like Minecraft is a really easy example of how things we used to do as kids, Legos, right? Now has become a virtual thing that you can do with your friends no matter where they are.
And to be honest with you, I always downplayed Minecraft for years. And then I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, I picked it up and I haven't looked back since. I was like, I will sit here and I will mine for 8 hours. It was the first game that I sat there and I was lost just mining, looking for diamonds. And I looked up and it was 8 hours later. I was like, what just happened? I'm stuck in this world mining stuff for 8 hours straight without even thinking about what I was doing. I was like, that is a dangerous game because I love it, man. I absolutely love it.
And what I love about Minecraft is that it just allows people to be creative.
Oh yeah.
Right? Especially for, children or even as us adults.
Yeah.
Right? Like
there's something soothing about hitting that block over and over and over again. Like if I'm having a rough day in a competitive first person shooter or whatever, I will throw Minecraft on and I am relaxed. I don't know what it is.
Absolutely.
I don't know what it is, but I can do it forever. And some people are like, well, why are you talking Minecraft? You can be competitive in Minecraft. There are there's competitions in Minecraft. There's Twitch rivalries in Minecraft. You just remember, Minecraft is a big world. So you can build and set things up to have competitions. Right. And people do that. So I mean, any video game can be competitive. Heck, we were recruiting kids for Farming Simulator 3 years ago, because they were making $800,000 at an event in Europe on Farm Simulator. How quickly can you combine and bail? I am not joking when I say there's something for everybody in the esports field. I laughed. Charlie told me, go recruit kids for this. I was like, you just told me to recruit for Farming Simulator. Yeah. You want to see the numbers? I was like, yeah. And he showed me $800,000. I was like, what is going on in Europe that I don't know about right now? Like, they're playing Farming Simulator, and John Deere, all these big brands had teams and sponsors. I was like, you have to be kidding me. But there is a corner for everybody under the umbrella of video games. And I mean, it's might sound crazy, it might sound wild, but welcome to esports, because that's exactly what it is. What do you see for the next 5 years in collegiate esports?
I really think that 5 years from now, pretty much every school in the country will have an esports team in one way or another. Right now we're all kind of scattered, which department we're in or where we kind of fall, but the demand and the interest is there. Right. And it's not specific to certain campuses, right? If you go to any campus in the country, there are going to be students who are interested in esports on that campus. There's the demand and the desire for some type of university supported program. What
Yeah.
would be really interesting is if the NCAA decides to step in
Right.
on esports, which I very much think will happen at some point,
Right.
potentially in the next 3 to 5 years. But that will definitely shape the landscape or shake up the landscape quite a bit if and when that happens. But yeah, I really believe 5 years from now, any school out there that, in the country probably will have an esports program.
Yeah, I really feel, and you always, this point always makes my wheels turn a little bit, because a lot of people will say NCAA esports. I was like, it's collegiate, just because it is. I still call it the Wild Wild West. Adam said he doesn't, he necessarily wouldn't call it the Wild Wild West, and we do have organizations such as NACE, and there's different conferences and divisions that run it correctly. But to me, I don't know how soon the NCAA will step in. Now, don't get me wrong. I think the NCAA will step in because there's a lot of money. And if the NCAA can make money, they're going to try to make money. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
They want some of that money. But when you look at esports, again, going back to the multiple title thing, it's so hard to say esport because it's not just one. And another thing is we don't own it. This is coming from publishers. This is coming from licensing agreements. We can't just say, this is our team, here's our competition. You have to have the rights to compete. Whereas, traditional sports, we didn't have to have the right to pick up a stick and go shoot a puck. That's not owned by anybody. But when you're talking franchising of a video game or leagues of a video game, that's different. And that's, I think, something the NCAA, I think, to be honest with you, I could see this in 5 to 10 years, and this is kind of a sidebar, but I could see the NCAA being at a table with multiple game developers and saying, hey, listen, we will give you this deal if we see these or this amount of profits or whatever. I could definitely see them making more of a pro agreement, if you will, because you see pros, kind of that professional sports agreement. I could see that with the NCAA and esports.
That's what I see happening too.
Yeah,
I think it's messy, like you said, right? It's not cut and dry. Like,
No.
oh yeah, let's do hockey and things like that. And I really think the things that I think will move the NCAA is one, money.
Correct.
Money is the ultimate driver when it comes to
money talks.
Yeah, money talks, right? Two, I think will be the amount of schools doing it.
Right.
I think that if you have almost every school in the country with some form of esports program, that forces them to pay attention to it.
Right.
Because even now, esports is expanding rapidly.
Correct.
But we're still not at that point where we're like 75, 100%. We're still not at those numbers yet. But I think, like you said, what will ultimately happen is the NCAA will try to partner with specific developers.
Right.
On, how do we turn this into an NCAA sanctioned league, right? Whether it's Riot Games or Epic Games or
Blizzard,
whoever that might be.
Right?
Yeah. And maybe it's true that maybe they get them all at one time, where they're able to say, hey, these are the games we partnered with, or maybe it starts with one, right?
Right.
Maybe the first league we partner with is Riot Games, and we're running League of Legends and Valorant as the two games that we're doing, right? I think it could go a lot of different directions, but it's hard for me to believe that with as much interest and as much money as there is around collegiate esports, that the NCAA can keep their hands off of it for a long time.
And when we talk about developers like that, you have to remember what these developers have done. Like Epic literally brought down cross-platform playing. Like they made it physically possible for everyone to play with each other on every console or in platform. That had never been thought of until, 2018. They said, watch out, boys, here we are. And they broke down every gaming wall that we never thought would happen. And when you talk about like the companies like Riot or Blizzard or Activision, whoever you want to put in these categories, these AAA companies are, they are looking to break walls down. And they have already broken down several walls. So to me, sitting down at the table with the head of NCAA or the heads of NCAA, I don't think that's far-fetched. And I think that is something that could be easily done. And I think that is where we'll probably be. I would say that'd have to be probably 5 to 10 years.
But I'll give you at least 5 to 10 years for
Yeah.
things like that. But yeah, I think it's exciting from the game developer standpoint too. I think there's a lot of value
Oh yeah.
in tying that into it, right? So when the NCAA reaches out and says, "Hey, we want to do this," I think that these developers might be quick to pick up the phone, right?
Right.
Because when you can get a an ecosystem like the NCAA provides, right, where you have the standardization,
Mm-hmm.
kind of organization, it the branding and the name of the NCAA, right? If X university hears from the NCAA, hey, we're going to do this as esports, right? That
Yeah.
carries a lot of weight to that university
Oh yeah.
that the NCAA is saying something, right? So it positions you as a developer in a good place to now I'm guaranteeing my game is on every college campus
Yep.
across the country, right?
I mean that's and another thing that I don't think people really realize is just how big of a beast NCAA really is. Like NCAA football, I mean, it's massive. Like look
Right.
at the games that example, there's 35 bowls. Like there's no reason for all of these bowl games, but guess what? It's a moneymaker, you know?
Right.
And so when you have schools like Michigan or you have schools like, all these major schools that say, okay, we can get into this. Examples, Boise State. Boise State's probably the best major that I have seen with a program. And there might be more out there. There might be better ones out there. That's probably the best one that I have seen. But like Michigan's not there yet. Michigan State's not there yet. There's some big schools that aren't there yet. But when they do, one, that's going to help, a lot of other smaller schools because then they'll be like, oh, hey, look, these guys got it. We got to get it. But it's also going to have the NCAA stepping in and then also the game developer stepping in. And that's just going to push everyone to be better. It just has to work cohesively right now. Right now, it's just like I've mentioned, it's kind of like you said, it was a mess, as I call the Wild Wild West, because it's starting to take shape. It's just not there yet. And sidetrack, when you guys get going at Grand Valley, are you guys going to be in NACE or are you guys going to be in like some of those divisions out there? Do you know that yet?
So, I mean, the primary one that I'm looking at is NACE.
Right.
But there's might be the opportunity that like CRL
Right.
is kind of
College
outside
Rocket
of
League.
NACE's, right.
Yeah.
So, there's opportunities that some of our teams might be competing in multiple leagues.
Right.
But the league that I'm proposing kind of looking at is
NACE.
NACE is the main league.
And that is North American
National Association
Collegiate
Esports.
Esports.
Yep.
That's right. I always screw that up because as a kid, it was always North American. But when I did bring that up, who was it? Caitlin? I said North American, but she's like, it's not North American, but we do have Canadian schools.
Yeah,
it's like, okay,
true.
all right, got it. Because people tend to forget that there's Canadian schools that do that have slipped their way in. So now I got lost in our questions. We got so wrapped up in what the esports will be in the NCAA here in a few years. Oh, there's the next question. How many times do you have to stop and tell yourself I'm working in gaming?
Ooh, I think we talked about kind of that struggle, right? Like this is, I think, my 6th year in esports now. So to get to where things are today and where I am today, I just have this appreciation for the position that I'm in.
Right.
At my last place, I was kind of a one-person show there. A director does all those things you talked about.
All the hats, dude. Yeah.
All the different hats, right? So there were a lot of times that, most week I was there 60 to 70 hours a week, but I loved it, right?
Right.
And, I put so much time and effort to get to that opportunity that I was going to leave nothing on the table, right? I was going to give everything that I could to make sure that this was the best it could be for my students.
Yep.
And yeah, it's exciting. It's a dream job. I get to tell people that I wake up every morning excited about what I'm doing. Yeah. And there's so much value in that because I've had those jobs where you didn't want to get out of bed.
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like that was another day at the grind. I don't feel that anymore. And I don't know how you put a value or.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's the exact same way. I mean, I did weather in the morning shift, which was 2 to 10 in the morning every day for 11 and a half years. And video games weren't an option. But in 15, 16, I started streaming video games. I was like, oh, wow, I do this. I can do this. And there became a passion. There became a fire for video games that I never had before. And I started opening other doors. I started in the, the organization, the pro aspect, the managing aspect. Like, I just continued to rip doors open. I was like, I'm going that way. I'm going that way. And it made me, there was a feel that I could not wait to get done with work to go do something with video games. And this year I was just like, all right, listen, if it is possible, I would like to still do my meteorology gig, but is it possible that we can kind of run with the esports here? And they're allowing me to do that. And the fact that, like, today I was just giddy driving back here to get onto the podcast with you. I love talking and playing and doing everything esports. And it just brings a smile to my face when everyone else is like, yeah, this is what I want to do. And that's another message that I want to really relate to kids is, don't get stuck in that grind. Like, for my generation, we were always told, pick something, work towards it, work the rest of your life in that field. Like, and it's not a bad thing. My grandfather, my father, like, all my family has done it, but there's you don't have to do that. There's different avenues. You can enjoy what you're doing for the rest of your life. Like, enjoy it, work it, do what you want to do. And that is now, even with video games in college, that is now feasible for those kids that want to play video games or look into video games or have anything under the esports umbrella. And that's what I find exciting.
When I talk to students and I'm like, what do you want to do? What you're passionate about?
Right.
I have my own story of, doing a turn and, later in my life into something else that I wanted to do. And I just am always encouraging students to chase your passion.
Yeah.
If you have something as unlikely as it may sound or seem, right, go for it. Do it. Because what you don't want, for me, my big thing was, I didn't want to wake up 60 years old and never have tried to chase what really got me excited and passionate about. And I love my job. Yeah. Like, I get so excited going into work and being around students. And it's a big reason I think Collegiate is a good fit for me personally, because being around students and seeing their passion and their energy energizes me. I get so refreshed and recharged just being around the students when they're in the Laker Esports Center or seeing them on campus and talking about video games or the latest match or whatever it might be, right? That is so energizing to me as a person.
It really is.
Like, I just, when you're around people who are excited about whatever they're talking about, you can just feel the energy in it.
Oh, yeah.
It just, it's awesome. I love it.
It brings a different atmosphere to the room.
It 100% does, right? People glow when they're talking about something that they're excited about. Yeah. And, I get to do that on a daily basis because those students who are around there in the LEC are all extremely passionate about what they're playing and what they're doing.
And that is one thing that I cannot, I could say every podcast guest that I've had or everybody that I've had on the show, whatever it is, not one of them is doing it for, the money, or they're not doing it for, they're doing it for the love of video games. They're doing it for the love of the kids and getting esports out there and growing it. And there's a glow to them, whether it's, conveying a message about esports or whether it's teaching kids, but it's all centered and wrapped around video games. And it's just like, yeah, I want to be a part of that because, like you said, there's something different to it when you enjoy it, or whether there's such a passion and love for it that you can just feel the difference. And there really is. I like playing video games with people that I've never met before, but every day I look forward to playing with those people. There's some of my closest friends. Like, there's something that is just, I don't know what it is. You know what I'm saying? There's a certain high of playing video games with people that I've never met before, but I absolutely have every single day. There's more joy in my life that I got to do that, and I don't know what it is, but it's there, and I'm glad it's becoming a thing.
When I first started coaching, I started out as a volunteer. Yeah. I wasn't paid, and it wasn't, there was a lot of hours, multiple times a week, right? But I loved it. Right. It was my best part of my day to get to head out and help coach the League of Legends team, being around the students, being around the players. That to me, it didn't matter that I wasn't being paid because I was being paid out and, the
what you wanted to do,
my excitement and passion, right? Yeah.
I mean, that's the same thing. That's the same thing with me. Like, they're trying to give us an employee appreciation day where you have to take it off. I was like, I don't want to take the day off. Like, I'm doing what I want to do. Like, and even still, next Monday is my employee appreciation day. They're giving it to me paid off. I was like, I still have 2 podcasts I'm recording that day. And I told my boss, I was like, I got podcasts that day, so if you have meetings, just let me know. He's like, you're not supposed to be working. I was like, I'm not really working. I'm shooting a podcast about things I love to do. Like, either way, you could pay me or not pay me, I'm still gonna do it. Like that's the difference.
Exactly. Like we're off today, and here I am excited to be
Exactly.
talking to you. So.
There's something about esports and video games that's like, I'm gonna be playing them anyway. So I'm not gonna be taking hours off the clock. I'm not gonna be working overtime. I'm doing this on my own time to begin with. So why not just bring it to you guys anyway and make it my job? Like, regardless, I'm doing it. Yeah,
I thought it was
that's a side note.
Yeah, you mentioned playing with strangers, right? Kind
Yeah.
of forming bonds and things. So, fun little story about me, I guess, is that my best friend I met through playing video games.
Yeah.
So, my best friend's name is Alex, and he actually lives in Texas.
Yep.
So, I was playing League of Legends, met him playing League of Legends. Gosh, probably 8 to 10 years ago now. It's been a long time. And, it was kind of funny. I eventually moved down to Texas to live there around them, and I got a job down there. And it was crazy for my parents saying, you're going to move with people that you've never met in person. But I try to explain to them, I talk to these people for 3 hours, 4 hours a night.
Yeah.
I'm building relationships in the same way. The only difference is that they're not literally sitting next to me, right? I'm having the same bonds and the same friendships through gaming and over the internet that I would have in person. It's just we're doing it over League of Legends versus a drop-in hockey league, right? It's a little bit different of a way of doing it.
Exactly what it is. And the funny thing was, I remember when all of this started to come around, like, as a kid, you were always told, don't talk to strangers. And nowadays, like, you jump on a game and you're playing with strangers and you tell them your life story and you become best friends. And then they end up being in your weddings or like part of the family. It's just like, we kind of took a side road. Like, I talk to strangers all the time. But I mean, that's how I keep in touch with, and that's how it started. Like for me, online gaming started probably my sophomore year. That's when it really started taking off. And that was the release of the Xbox 360. They had a very good platform. They had a great OS. You could comm like instantly with people and your friends. Broken. I mean, like hands down, best thing that was ever invented. So you're playing those games, and then you start getting into games with people you've never met before across the country, across the world. And when we graduated college, one of my hockey buddies, who lives down in Detroit, that's how we kept in touch. One of my buddies I graduated high school from that was in my wedding, that's how we kept in touch. We would play Modern Warfare every night. And then we got hooked up, with another buddy of mine from high school with a whole group of characters that I'd never met before from Iowa. And that became my comp team for World at War. And I actually just sat down with one of those guys to play Halo the other day. And that was the first time I had played with him in 3 or 4 years. Still, it was like we never missed a beat. It was like, Biter, you remember those nights? Oh, yeah, man. It was. I was like, this is what gaming is about to me. Like, I have made so many close friendships and relationships with people that I would take a bullet for. And I've never met some of these people. Clam, who I play games with every day. He lives in Mississippi, and for the last 3 years, every evening we've played video games together for the most part. There might be, a few days hit or miss, but it's like that guy literally is a brother to me, and I've never physically met him. But I can guarantee you one thing is if we were to walk in the room right now together, we would not skip a beat. It would be like we've spent our entire life together. And that's what I love about gaming.
It's like, and even more so, I feel like now that I'm, so busy, but like,
oh yeah,
gaming has always been to me a social thing.
Like, really has.
More so, it's been about who I'm playing with rather than what we were playing.
Right.
I can. You talk about Modern Warfare. I remember my freshman year of college, we had a 360 set up in a room. It was actually my dorm room. And we had a group of like 8 to 10 guys that that game was running. Modern Warfare 2 was running all the time.
Yeah.
Like it was constantly on. It was just, people would come in, we had the controllers, you hand them off. Oh, I'm off to class now. Oh, I'm going to go grab a to-go box of food, right? Like we had all the chairs set up in there, right? And that was how we hung out, right?
Yeah, that is exactly how college was. My junior and senior year, we wouldn't know who was in our room. We'd walk in and there'd be someone playing video games. Whether it would be athletic friends or whether it was just friends down the hall. And it wasn't a specific friend group. It wasn't just my friends. It was friends of
Right.
friends. It was my wife, at the time, my girlfriend's friends. Like, and now we're all friends from college, even though we really didn't hang out in the same kind of groups outside of video games. But there was always someone in our room playing video games, whether I was there or not. And after a while, my wife, Kyle, was like, should we start locking our room? She got kind of worried because like everyone's just in our room. I was like, I don't think so. I don't think everything's going to go missing. But we had so many games that were coming out at the time that were so multiplayer based. And that hadn't happened before. You know, we had Halo 3 come out. We had Modern Warfare come out. We had all of the Call of Duties 2 and 3. We had, at the time, Rock Band had just released. So we had that was multiplayer, but you played instruments. It wasn't just Guitar Hero, even though we had Guitar Hero in there and people were competing in that.
Yep.
So I was just like, that is what set it off for me.
So I ended up joining a fraternity in college, which was nothing like what you see in the movies.
Oh, yeah.
Like yeah, and it was like the reason that, like, one of the things I remember the most about why I decided to join this fraternity, I walked into the house one day and I hear this yelling. I'm like, what is happening, right? And so I go upstairs and there's a group of all the guys are playing League of Legends together in different rooms. They're all in their dorm rooms, right? But since they didn't have, like, you know, the comps, like
right.
Discord wasn't a thing.
They're yelling.
Then, right? They're literally yelling at each other across and down the hallways as things are happening while they're all playing League of Legends. And I'm like, okay, this is a place I can fit in at, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's exactly.
I walk into the house and people are screaming about video games. So,
that is the best thing too, because you wonder, like you said, you wonder what's happening, and then when you get the explanation, like, oh yeah, get it now, I get it, because we've all been in that. I've done that several times. Oh, at Christmas. Because my cousins, and this is another thing about gaming, I've gotten into relationships with cousins that I never saw. And we came closer as a family because of video games. Like, that is basically how I communicate. And really, I don't see them, but that's how we communicate almost on a daily basis anymore, is my cousins and I play video games. And again, we would always go to my grandma's for Christmas Eve. We'd open presents as a family, whatever, but we'd always go 4 or 5 hours early to spend time with family because we don't see them much. And my cousins ended up bringing their Xbox one Christmas, the original OG Xbox, and they had Halo. And we would sit there and split the 4 screen. We're playing Halo. And it ended up becoming that competitive thing every Christmas. Yeah, what'd you bring? And you remember there was a game for Xbox. I can't remember, but it was like Mario Party, but you had 4 players. And it was a lot of fun. I can't remember the name of it anymore. But after that, Christmases started. Once we started going to college and everything, it started being a little bit different. So when the 360 came out, we're like, we don't have to do this at Christmas anymore. We can do it whenever we want. Halo 2 was the master of that one because everyone was on that one. And then now some of my younger cousins that are early 20s, late teens, they started playing Fortnite and games like that. And then they noticed I stream and I play video games, and we became more cohesive as a family. I was like, who would have thought video games would bring me closer to my family who I don't see a whole lot in a year, let alone a lifetime, you know?
Absolutely.
But there it is.
I'm the oldest of, the boys in my family, right? So it's like my cousins, even if they're like 14, 15 years old, right? Yeah. I have something that when I see them, even though, they may live in Florida, whenever I see them, we instantly have this connection and things to talk about, right? And we're playing games and we have these common interests. And I think that's more so, we're talking about cousins, right?
Yeah.
But also that parent-child relationship
that's
too,
true.
I think has really been a cool way for parents to connect with their kids now. A lot of times it was like, video games was something that kids kind of did, right? But as we've grown up, it's like, oh, I'm right there playing games with my child right beside it. Alex has a kid and they're playing Valorant together, right? Yep. Like that's a way that they bond and connect with each other.
That is something you're starting to run into more and more and more now, is because obviously, like, my generation, I'm 36. Kids were playing games through 45, even close to 50 years old now. So of course, when given the opportunity, parents are going to sit down and play games or teach their kids games. So that's kind of a thing now, where before, when I was a kid, it wasn't a thing. They would play, but it wasn't, necessarily with you because we were kind of the first generation of NES when I was 2, 3 years old. So now you have me. If I had a kid, of course I'd be sitting down and teaching them the ins and outs of Mario or any video
Right.
game. You know what I'm saying? So you're seeing a lot more of those kids, even when they're off to college, they can still play online with their parents. And I've seen it. I've seen even grandparents. That's how they, keep in touch with their grandkids. They
I
play
kind of
online
got
games.
I kind of got lucky in that, my dad always took an interest in kind of things,
My
my
dad did
parents took
too.
interest, like, so I can remember playing games like Twisted Metal or
Yeah,
Age of Empires. We still, to this day, me and my brother, I'm 30 now, but we'll set up a night where my dad hops on Age of Empires and, at my parents' house, and my
that's
brother's in
awesome.
Boston and I'm here, and we're all online hanging out playing games together,
Yep.
right? Which is a cool way for us to connect that might not have been possible,
Right.
10 years ago, 5 years ago, even.
And that's one way that we kind of, or it's just family in general. Like when I was a kid, like my stepdad now, my father passed away about a year ago. But my stepdad now still has interest in games, but they don't have the high speed internet up here to play online. But whenever we were home, even growing up, he wanted to play. He introduced me to Resident Evil. He introduced me to some of these, uh, the the story games that I might not necessarily have an interest in when I was younger. So for him, I can thank for the solo. And actually, what was really funny when we got the N64, one of his favorite games was Toy Soldier or Little Green Army Men. That you would go around and it was essentially like Call of Duty, but it was Green Army Men, the little toys that you had,
Yep.
walking around. And he absolutely loved that game. We ended up buying it out of a whim because he's like, I want to play this. So we'd always play that more. We play the story. But yeah, it really runs deep now, man. We're generations deep into video games. So it doesn't surprise me that, you have higher ups at colleges or high schools because now they have kids that do it and they can do it with their kids. So they're like, why don't we have this as a program? So I mean, it all goes hand in hand, and it's really crazy how much video games really does, and how much people don't understand how much video games does. Like when we told my uncle that Maddie and Rhino, my cousins that I became very close with over the last several years playing video games with, they're like, "What happened?" They're like, "Oh, we're playing video games. That's how we've kind of reconnected." Like I never had a relationship with a whole lot of cousins on my Stevens side, just because I never saw much. But we started playing games, and it's like we've been brothers our entire lives. So it's really cool that video games can do that. Not only on a friend level, but a personal level,
Right.
and that's just what's huge with video games in general.
I'm sure you run into this a lot too, but yeah, for me working on a college campus, right? Like
Hmm.
when people find out or hear that I'm the esports person, right?
Oh yeah,
Oh, my son plays this game, or
yeah,
my
yep,
nephew plays this game, right? It's like, and now I'm connecting. It's everybody has some video game story or
yep.
connection. It feels like that they can talk about with other people.
And that's another thing that I've noticed because when I first got into weather, everyone can connect to weather. Everyone wants to know how the weather's going to be. They can talk about weather forever. Like, oh yeah, this weather. I mean, that's how you always talk to someone. So the weather was always there. It's very easy to communicate about the weather. Video games is that way now. Like anybody you run into, oh yeah, I play. Yeah, I'm still doing weather, but I do video game stuff on the mainly now. They're like, "Oh, video games." They're like, "Oh, you should talk to my kid who plays a lot of Fortnite." I was like, "Yeah,
Yep.
I do that all the time." And then I had kids emailing me that have seen the show, and his dad emailed me because he's like 8, 9 years old or something like that, and he makes Mario worlds for Mario Map Maker, and he's like, he really wants you to play some of his worlds for the show. I was like, if I had a Switch, I would instantly do this because this is an amazing idea. I just love the fact that kids are getting that creative juice already at 8, 9 years
Right.
old. They're making these maps and they want me to play them. I will hands down play that, instantly. And that's content. Like these kids, I find I'm more in touch with these kids than I am so much of an older generation anymore, even though I can, balance both. But it's kind of like we're at a crossroads. You being 30, I'm 36. Like we're dead in the middle of the, what I call it's the lost generation. We're not the
Right.
olders, but we're not, the youngers either. And I feel like we're the ones that are being able to put the controller in their hands, or mouse keyboard, whatever you want to call it, and kind of point these kids to something that they didn't have the opportunity, or knew that they had the opportunity of doing, which
I
is
love,
huge.
like when I was at Muskingum, I always invited the community, kids to come into
Yeah.
our arena and play. because, for a long time, even when I was growing up, and video games have kind of been stigmatized. And I think in a lot of ways they still kind of are today, but it's getting a lot better. But to me, come hang out, play with my college students, it legitimizes the things that they are passionate about, right?
Oh, very much.
Playing video games can be something that's cool and fun, and you can do it in college, right? It can tie into your education. So I love it when we have younger kids around, especially around the college students, because my skin of my college students were so good. Come play games with me, right? Like, they sit next to me, we'll get in the comms together, and it was always great. But I remember that when I was a freshman in high school, I went to Hope for I did Model UN, all through college as well. I went to Hope, and we spent the night overnight, and the guys that I was staying with had Guitar Hero in them.
Yep.
And they had a bunch of people coming in, and they were like, "Oh, you guys want to play Guitar Hero with us?" and things like that. I was like, "This is so cool! I'm hanging out with college students playing Guitar Hero." Right? And they don't go to bed at 9 o'clock.
No,
great.
we're up, man, drinking Mountain Dew until 4 a.m, brother. But yeah, I it's just something about video games, and like, I don't know what it is, man. There's just something to it that has become a generational thing. Like, the kids nowadays are born with it in their DNA. Whereas, for us, it was something that might have kept you busy, or, kind of took you away for a few hours. And nowadays, like, I come home, or like if I've had a rough day, I want to sit down and play video games. That's how I de-stress. Whereas a lot of people back in the day, oh, I'm going to have a beer, or I'm going to have a glass of wine. I'm going to de-stress. Like, for me, I got to play a video game. That's how I'm going to take my anger out on what just happened through the day. But there's something to video games that, to me, is very similar to something like you can always talk about the weather. There's always something in video games, and it doesn't matter who you are. You can always talk about video games to somebody, and they will pick something up. Like, even when you mention, like, Bowser and Koopa, my dog's names, like, I've had several people say, "Oh, those are the names from Mario Brothers." I was like, yeah. I mean, and they know Mario. Like, Mario video games are so culturally huge that they do make impacts, whether you play them or not. People know Mario. Like, the biggest outcry yesterday, IGN released an article that Chris Pratt is not going to do the Mario voice. He's just doing his normal voice when he's doing the new Mario Brothers. And you know how much of an outcry culturally that generated? Like, I was like, oh no. Like, Chris Pratt doesn't know the can of worms he just opened. Like, you stick true to Mario, brother. You do not do something that is not Mario. And it was just like, that was the biggest threat. That was trending on Twitter. I was like, that's where we're at in this world right now. When culturally, a character from a video game can impact someone or make someone so upset in the day that it is trending on social media. That is something special. You don't see that in many facets. And to me, I'm just proud to be a part of it. I want to be the part of the positive side of things, because there are negative parts of this industry as well that need to be addressed, that need to be taken care of, that need to be squared away. But that comes with any industry in general. There's always going to be a negative, but we need to squash the negative to make the positive ring out. And I really feel like collegiate esports and getting back to where we've all, with this show in general, take that stigma away that video games are a waste of time. Like you said, there is a stigma to it. There still is here in Northern Michigan. Hence why I have this podcast and this show. I want people to realize this is not a waste of time anymore. It wasn't a waste of time to begin with, but there are more opportunities now than there was when I was a kid. These kids can use it to advance their careers, to advance their lives. They don't have to go play the sticks or mouse and keyboard at school. They don't have to do anything that involves playing the game, but they can go to school on esports-minded scholarships.
Yep.
And there's what Doc always throws this number out, and it still blows my mind to this day. I think it's something like 425 schools in the United States have esports-minded stuff. 250 of them, I think, have scholarships or something like that. The number is growing double yearly.
Yep.
And it just goes to show you this is not going anywhere anytime soon. And it's really going to be something that, you're going to see pop up even more. Not just Grand Rapids or Detroit or more like the areas like Traverse City up here, or more like areas like Sault Ste. Marie, well to the north. These smaller towns, they're going to have the opportunities. It just takes a little bit to get there, but you're seeing it start to develop, and that's a big thing.
I think collegiate esports, you said, the idea of breaking down that stigma.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
collegiate especially has a huge role to play in that because,
Big
when you hear, oh, Grand Valley State University has an esports team, like that means something to people, right? And then when you hear things like, oh, your son or daughter is getting a scholarship to go play esports in college, right?
Yep.
Like that really rings bells for people when they're like, oh, there's money to help them do this. Like that's really kind of a barrier breaker there.
I mean, we're still at the point where I tell people that I got paid to play a video game. They're like, wait, what? Like, they still don't understand that. They still don't understand that this is a business and a money generator, but they don't understand that it's a multi-billion money generator. Yeah. And when you talk about multi-billion generator, then you start looking at it and you have to realize a lot of this stuff isn't uncovered yet. This is only going to be way bigger in 5 to 10 years because everyone who is in esports right now, they're blazing their own path. Like examples that I've had on the podcast. One, collegiate programs. No collegiate program is the exact same. They're all blazing their own trail. What they leave behind is very different from every other college athletic. And that's why, like you, Adam, Carl, Doc, Caitlin up at NMC, Cody over at Northwoods, Terry up at NMC. Like every single program is different and they all have their unique spots. Then when you take a look at things like doctors, Gamer Doc, she is a medical professional in esports. Like there's so many different things that haven't been uncovered yet that people can get into and make a lot of money and a good living doing things that they love in video games. A lot of people just haven't discovered it yet.
I love it.
It's so funny.
When people are, hey, well, I love telling people that my job is that I get to run a collegiate esports program. Because people are always like, wait, that's a full-time job? Like you get paid to do that? I'm like, yeah, it's the biggest cool conversation starter.
The latest one that I had was in Drop-In. Drop-In started like 2-3 weeks ago, and a lot of the guys were like, "Oh, you're not an MTM anymore. Where you at?" I was like, "They're paying me to play video games." They're like, "Wait, what?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm getting paid to essentially play video games. I still do a little bit of weather." They're like, "You're playing video games and you're making money?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll explain it." And then you explain it. Oh, the younger kids get it, but I'm playing Drop-In with 30, 40, 50-year-old guys, and they're like, this is an option? I was like, run the numbers, man. There's a lot of money in esports, and, in the college level, especially because a lot of these guys have kids going into college. And it was funny because one of the older guys in hockey's like, yeah, my kid is going to school for esports. He's actually really good at it. I was like, wait, where's he at? He's like, Northwood, playing Rocket League. I was like, no kidding. Yeah. He's like, you're doing that now? I was like, well, I have a show up here to cater to people like you guys that don't understand this, that their kids can go to school. He's like, yeah, I didn't believe him. I thought it was a scam when he told me. Then we talked to Cody. I was like, that's funny. So I got one more question and then we'll get into some other things here. We got to get away from this tangent. I could talk for days on this, just as I know you could. But it really goes to show you just what video games can do. Not only to everyone, but take that for what it is. You and I just spent an hour talking about what video games have done for us and what we enjoy about video games and what we love about what our careers are doing in video games. That goes to show you, multiply it by multi-millions more, and it's just, that's how big video games is and how big the impact is. So when you say there's a cultural impact, that just goes to show you that it's absolutely massive, and that's why colleges are going to be up and running and blazing very quickly. But all right, so moving on. Now we're gonna move to this. So obviously you heard, and I had the privilege of sitting down with the CEO of Immortals. Immortals making that big move to the Great Lakes region, which is huge not only for you guys but also for anybody that has any hopes and aspirations of being a pro athlete when it comes to video games, because we don't have many choices here. We have a few. Renegades is down in Detroit. Lazarus is over in Ontario, but very few professional organizations like the Immortals are around here. They have a franchise team in Lull. I mean, like that's massive. So do you see more teams like Immortals, like the Renegades, like Lazarus, popping up here around the Great Lakes region?
So I think I wrote an article about this a few years ago, that ultimately, as I see esports kind of evolve over the years, I think more and more you'll get to a point where almost all of the pro franchises will be tied to a specific geographic region.
Right.
And it just makes sense from a business standpoint, right? Like there are reasons that the Detroit Pistons or the Detroit Red Wings
Right.
has the name Detroit in front of it, right? And it helps with the branding and creating a fan base and that staying power.
Right.
And so, I know that like Overwatch League has done some things like that,
Mm-hmm.
and CDL like has done that as well. And I ultimately think that that's what every league will move towards.
Oh yeah.
Is that League of Legends right now isn't that way, but Immortals is a big League of Legends
Right.
organization, and they're like, hey, we kind of we've noticed the potential here in the Great Lakes region, and we'd like to be out on the forefront of that, right? And yeah, I very much believe that ultimately esports organizations, all of them, will be tied to a specific region or city.
And I already saw in a tweet that Immortals has already sat down with many collegiate coaches or directors looking to, kind of say, hey, we're here and get to know them. And that was the biggest thing when I talked to Jordan Sherman, who's the CEO of Immortals. He's from Michigan. He graduated from the University of Michigan. So he knows, and that was the biggest thing. Like I told you, and like he was just echoing to me, was you always had to feel like you had to leave this state or this region to get somewhere in video games. And it made sense. You felt like you had to go to the West Coast. You felt like you had to go to LA. You felt like you had to go to New York or Florida or Austin. You had to be around where these hubs for pro esports was. And that changed for me, even before I talked to Jordan. When I went down and visited Carl, they are doing it right. Like they have a great blueprint where you have Renegades and then you have Carl under their umbrella practicing and playing in their facility, but then Carl has high schools practicing and playing in that facility as well. So like you have the amateurs, you have the collegiates, and then you have the pros. I was like, that is probably the smoothest blueprint that I have seen from amateur to pro, or possibilities of amateur to pro in esports. You don't have these kids saying, I'm just going pro. You have these kids that be like, oh, I'm going to go to college, and then I'm going to go to see if I can get with the pro team. JQ might even be with the Renegades off of Carl's Rocket League team here in the near future. Who knows? But I was like, he has that option. That is a big thing. So with Immortals saying, hey, we're coming here, we're going to reach out to colleges, possibly even Grand Valley down the road, I was like, that is a big thing. They're thinking the way that Carl kind of already has it set up. Whereas, they can get into the doors with you, do some recruiting, be like, hey, Grand Valley has a heck of a League of Legends kid right now. Let's, work with them, see if we can get him up here on this team or something like that. That is something that I think many are going to now possibly look at kind of fashioning their blueprint. And I have to give the shout out to Carl because they're doing it before Immortals is doing it with Renegades. But Immortals is coming to a region and saying, we can't take over the globe right now. That's not physically possible with esports. We cannot do that. We are going to start small and take over a region. And we're going to go to a region where we know there's a lot of capped potential. We're going to uncap that. And we're going to see all the potential and work with colleges and work with these kids and all the talent. And we're going to bring something that the Great Lakes region hasn't seen. And I really think that is something that you're going to see more of down the road, just because I think it's going to work,
Yeah. I had the pleasure of sitting down and talking with Immortals about some of the opportunities and things that we could collaborate on. And it just makes so much sense. Like,
oh, it really does.
It's a mutually beneficial relationship.
Correct.
Right? Me working with Immortals and the name recognition and the opportunities that come with working with a professional organization. And then from them, it's like working with these colleges and universities and getting the Immortals name out there in the forefront, in front of our students, in front of our clubs, starting to build that fan base, build that connection with students that hopefully they carry with them throughout the entirety of their esports fandom, right?
Correct.
So I'm excited that Immortals has joined the region. I've been an Immortals fan for a long time. Like when they made Worlds, gosh, they put out this like gold specific like Worlds jersey, and that's one of my favorite jerseys to wear. So I've been an Immortals fan for a while. I was really excited that they came here. Immortals and Team Liquid are like my two teams. So
I knew them briefly when they were in PUBG. They were in PUBG, I believe, briefly. I'm not sure which region they were from at the time with pub. The reason I'm so much into pub, I'm a huge BR fan, and I love watching pro BRs. Just because when you look at the strategy, especially team wise, like H1Z1 had something in their hands that they could not pull off, but they had something special, especially with all the teams working together and being the first BR to like show everything going on. I was like, oh my God, this is mind blowing, but they screwed everything up. But PUBG actually kind of picked up the pieces and said, we're going to do this correctly. And they've done something really amazing. But right now, Worlds is going on for PUBG, PGC. And I'm a TSM boy, because the TSM boys right now are the team that we signed when I was at Lazarus, and now they're with TSM. But the reason I love PUBG so much is very much probably why you like LOL so much, is I sat down to watch a match. My wife, who's never played a video game she's played some games, but she's not a gamer. She's a librarian. I walked down and I turned it on YouTube on my TV. I was like, what's she doing? She's like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm going to watch a PUBG game. We just signed this new team, and I'm going to watch their game. She's like, oh, okay. Just kind of shook it off. By the end of the first game, Matchroom, who was the caster at the time, and I praise him to this day still, she was on the side of the couch watching and understanding everything that was happening from his mouth, explaining what was going on and happening in this professional esports game. She has now, every time that PUBG's on, she watches. She was talking strategy by game 5. I was like, what is going on right now? Who are you? What have you done with my wife? Like, this is awesome. We can sit there and we can watch PUBG, and we have an affinity for it, which I didn't, think was possible with a sport in general. She's not a huge traditional sport fan. She loves the Tigers, but that is about it. And then, PUBG, we got to watch. We got to see what Purdy's doing. We got to see what, TSM's doing. We got to root them on. So for me, right now in Worlds, I'm rooting for those TSM boys. I would be bleeding pink if Lazarus had an option. They're not there. But I did know of Immortals when we had PUBG with Lazarus. I believe they had a PUBG team. But that's about all I knew of Immortals. I knew who they were. I just did not know how big of a deal it was. So when they announced it on Twitter and it blew up, I was like, oh. But Team Liquid is one of those teams that I've known forever. There's names that you associate with pro esports. Optic was always one. As a kid, I was a huge Optic fan. FaZe was like a little past my time. I never bought into the FaZe thing, but they did do some really cool trick shots. I'm not gonna lie. I appreciate what they are doing now in 100 Thieves. You don't see organizations making a tremendous amount of money on their own, but they're doing that. I kind of call them more of a business than an esports organization, but they have the talent. They have the content creation. They have faces to go along with their brand, which is cool. It's amazing. Hats off to them. But when you say Team Liquid or Immortals or Gen G, those teams, to me, those are like the sports teams with professional esports, in my opinion.
So I was a Team Liquid fan. Even before they were Team Liquid, they were Team Curse.
Right. Yeah, I remember Curse.
And then when they became Liquid, I'm like, so then I'm a Liquid fan. But yeah, it's exciting to see and interesting to see how different esports organizations have kind of entered the market in their own ways and tried to find their own little niche, right? You talked about 100 Thieves. They're like, we're going to come in and we're purposefully going to be different, right? Like we're going to find what makes us and just roll with it. Yeah. And like, I think FlyQuest is another organization that has done some cool things with like, we're doing things about the environment and raising money for charities and things like that, right? Everybody has kind of found their own little flavor when it comes to being an esports organization.
That's one thing. And that's one thing I have a huge respect for is, they have done it. Because like we mentioned earlier, esports is so new that you're blazing your own path. You're blazing your own trail. And they're blazing that one. And like it's wild to me that it's so popular. But I love to see it because they're doing something for esports. Now, I do have to say, Lazarus has been doing that too, where Lazarus got together with Lambton College, partnered, and they bring interns from the college program to work in an esports organization so they can see the details. Maybe they don't want to be there. Maybe they do want to be there. Maybe they want to be a recruiter. Maybe they want to be, a manager of some sort when it comes to esports. So you're seeing more and more and more of these professional organizations reaching out to colleges to work together in the esports program, which I think is going to be the next step. We didn't see that with, college esports right away. Orgs were like, we're going to grab the kids before they go to college. But now they're like, okay, listen, we can work with the colleges, have these kids get this degree, move into the esports organization, whether it's a pro, whether it's a manager, they can get all the esports knowledge before they get here. And it's going to pay off in spades. And you're just seeing, I think you're seeing that blueprint start to kind of reveal itself. And Immortals is just the next case in that. I really think you're going to see a lot of pro esports now working hand in hand with colleges, especially with LUL teams. You know how many LUL players out of college that could definitely be pro? There's a lot of them, and they're good too. So I think that is going to be the next step, personally.
I loved your story of talking about your wife and watching a match and kind of connecting over that. One of my favorite esports moments I've ever had was when I took my dad to the first live event that I ever took him to. I took him to the LCS finals in St. Louis.
Yep.
And my dad growing up, big college football fan, right? Love sports, things like that. Grew up Notre Dame fans. And I don't really think, I told them, and they've been supportive of, like, I'm trying to build this career in esports, right? But, especially when I first said that to them, they're like, oh, you want to work in competitive video games? Like, that's...
Look at me now, Mom.
Yeah, we believe in you, Chris. You can do it. But taking my dad to an actual live event, right?
Right.
And seeing the crowd. I mean, that place, it was sold out, right? Yep. Like, a packed crowd, went to 5 games, right? Like, Silver Scrapes played. It was, the energy there was amazing. And I think that's when he really first got it, right? He went from being somebody who, like, maybe was a bit skeptical to being an esports advocate. Right. Like, he got it. He made the connection. It could connect to his other experiences that he had in the past. Like, he saw the same passion and the same excitement that he might see at a college football game or a college basketball game. He saw that at a League of Legends finals. Yep. And, since then we've gone to more esports events, and we love going to them, right? Because, there's just something about sports in general that connects people.
The energy in that place, especially if you've never seen it before or witnessed it, even on YouTube, if you've never seen it, the energy that comes through there is something electric that you can't get anywhere else. A lot of people will say it's kind of like a traditional sport. When the big house comes unglued, and at a big game, that is something, that's comparable. But there's something different when it comes to an esport event that is packed and something crazy happens. You might not understand what happened, but you can feel the top on that place just come undone. And it's something to me, like, that I didn't know what was happening. Like, I watched a lot of those League of Legends events. I still to this day don't understand. I've never played it. And I don't want to, because I'm afraid I'm going to get sucked away from everything that I'm doing already.
I was so impressed.
But there's something to that.
You had said that, the casters on your PUBG match were explaining about your wife. By game 5 of that game, my dad was giving me draft strategy. He's like,
oh, was he really?
He's like, I think they should pick this champion. This one's been working good for them, right? Like, they were doing a good.
That's
job.
That's what I love about esports, and that's what I'm pushing with. I had Matcham on the show. He reached out and was like, "Yeah, I can do this." I was like, "Dude, I really want you here because you are a caster in something that's not too popular with everybody yet. And you literally have to take something that someone knows nothing about. It's different with football, baseball, hockey, or basketball. They know what's going on, so they don't have to explain the sport to you. But you don't know what's happening here. Odds are this is the first time you've started, and you have to understand what's happening when it comes to scoring, what happens to like the actual gameplay, what these teams are trying to do, and he does that perfectly. And that's why he's a caster in esports, and that's why I push that. These kids come into leagues like, I believe it was Adam and also Carl mentioned Powder. Tried to come in to be on Rocket League, but he couldn't. He just wasn't good enough. So they said, how about you cast? And he casted. He's now a professional caster for Rocket League. Right. And I was like, people don't understand. You're not necessarily going to pick up the sticks, and you're not going to be playing these in school, more than likely. But you can try. You can definitely try. But guess what? Your knowledge into these sticks will help open up other people's eyes into the game that they're watching people play the sticks on, or mouse and keyboard. And people might not understand they have a casting talent. Like a lot of people when they go to school don't realize they can cast or want to cast, but then they do it and they're like, oh, hey, that was a lot of fun. I'm gonna do that again, and then they end up taking it somewhere.
Esports is so much more than just the starters.
Oh
right?
yeah, it really is.
And as a side note, I can't hear the name Powder now without thinking of Arcane. I don't know if you've watched it.
I haven't yet.
Oh,
I'm waiting for the whole thing to come out so I can binge it because everyone's told me, watch it. I was like, I'm one of those guys where I wait for the entire show to come out. Is it?
The last few episodes came out this weekend. So
okay.
The whole series is there for you.
All right, got it.
So you'll have to jump on it. Highly recommend.
Usually Netflix releases like everything right away, so I was upset. And everyone's like, oh, it's so good. I can't wait till next week. I was like, well, I'm waiting until it's out because I hate waiting. And the fact that streaming services now like give you everything, I was like, this is the way. This is the way. And unfortunately, Disney Plus holds on to everything, so we have to wait 2 months for The Mandalorian to watch it because we won't watch week to week.
I'm a binger too. I have to. And that's like even stuff that's like, oh, they only have one season. What if I really like this? I'm gonna want to watch at least 2 or 3.
I made that mistake when Netflix was making its stream push. I started Breaking Bad before the show ended, and I had to wait for season 5 in 2 pieces. And then I did the same thing with Justified on FX. I started it, and I was like, oh, this is a really good show. And the last season hadn't come out yet, so I had to wait a whole year for the last season to come out.
Mine was Game of Thrones. Like when I first started Game of Thrones, I think it was like season 3 or season 4.
Yeah.
I was like, I literally watched. This was my mistake. I turned it on at like 8:00 at night. I'm like, this is amazing. The first season.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't sleep that entire night. All of a sudden, I'm like,
I want more.
Season 1. I'm like, it's 10:30 in the morning. Like, what happened?
Yeah, that was. I'm not a Game of Thrones fan. My wife, however, has read all the books, and yeah, the last season. I'm sorry for your disappointment.
Yeah, it wasn't the best. to say the least.
One more question. Hey, you want a piece of good news?
Let's hear it.
You have officially surpassed the Sir Carl Leone for the longest podcast. We're at 136. Yeah. So, and we still have a segment left. Yeah. I have one more question for you before we wrap up the question segment. Well, what makes esports what it is in your personal opinion? I pretty much think we could just point to this podcast and say that is what makes it. But what do you think in your personal opinion?
To me, esports is about connections through video games.
Yeah.
Like it is a thing where something that you're passionate about, you can be passionate about with other people. My personal story that it was this connection the collision of my love of gaming and my love of competition. Yeah. That's really, to me, kind of the essence of esports.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, it can fall under the traditional umbrella. It can fall under, anything that you do in life. I feel like man in general, woman, man, whatever, competition is just in our DNA, our blood. And then the next thing that's in our DNA is now video games, So, of course, competitive video games is going to make a home somewhere in someone's lifetime. And it's just now we are lucky to be a part of it exploding at the moment, And a lot of people are like, oh, it's because of blue hair. No, it's not because of Ninja. He helped speed it up, I think, a little bit. But you have to remember, people have been doing this since early 2000s. People have been doing this since the early 90s in arcades. Right. Like, this isn't a new thing. It's just now becoming a bigger thing. So it's cool that we are now in this age of technology and we can, help build it and become what it is.
I always tell people that when you look at the word esports, the important piece is sports.
Right.
It's not the E, it's the sports. And to me, esports is 95% just like any other sport out there. 95% of basketball, you got the same jobs, the same type of people needed to run it.
Yep.
We just play on a different type of field.
Correct.
We really do. Like that to me is the biggest difference, is that our field is different.
We just don't have a cool, catchy name like hockey or baseball or basketball.
Well, I think esports is a pretty cool name.
Yeah, but I mean, if you take the E away, it's just sports. The E just stands for, the technologically advanced people. We're just technologically advanced. That's all.
Or a name like football, where it's different meaning depending on where you are.
Very rarely do the feet ever touch the ball in that game. I never understood it. So, Chris, that wraps up the question portion. We are now halfway off the hot seat for you. We do have a fun segment here, and then I also forgot that I left the piece of paper with the questions downstairs. So I'm going to take 5 seconds to run downstairs and get those. So do not go anywhere. We'll have much more in this section with Chris Bilski about 10 random questions. I have to rattle these off for everyone because here's the thing. I had these things as 10 rapid fire questions in a minute. All right. I ran my first podcast. I quickly learned this is not going to happen in a minute because everyone, and I mean everyone, has to defend their answers when I ask these 10 questions. You will not, our friendship will not be ruined. I promise you. But even Jordan Sherman of the Immortals was like, dude, I'm doing this in a minute. I was like, all right, dude, you're not going to do this in a minute. You're going to want to defend your answer. After the first question, he's like, yeah, he stopped his timer. He had a timer on his phone. Stopped the timer because he's like, I have to defend this answer.
If the length of the podcast so far has said anything, I won't even pretend that we can handle this. And we might need at least a minute per question because,
it's more than that. Just because there's going to be, I guarantee it. But I'll be right back. I got to grab those. All right, we're back. I almost tripped and fell down the stairs. It's fine. We're good. All right. 10 questions, 10 random questions. And if you've ever heard the podcast before, for the most part, they're going to be the same, but there are different ones. I have now decided that I'm throwing different ones in because some people were cheating knowing what I was going to ask. I won't say names. I actually don't know if they were cheating, but it sounded like they already knew the answers. All right. So number one, Chris, you're on the hot seat for 10 questions here. Favorite console/platform?
Ooh, platform as in, can I say PC?
Yeah, that's what I mean by platform.
Okay.
Yeah.
So originally growing up, I was Xbox. Xbox 360 was what we had. It was a big deal. But when I kind of got into League of Legends, right, that really was
Changed
my
the game.
dive into PC gaming. Yeah. And to me, it got to that point where, with a few exceptions, pretty much any game I wanted to play, I could play on PC.
Right.
So, yeah, I've been a PC gamer for probably 10 years now. I would say that's my primary one.
That's the thing is, like, for a long time, when I started streaming off my Xbox. And I was an Xbox kid. I was a PlayStation kid. I was a Nintendo kid to start. But every time I upgraded, I was like, oh, this is it. This is it. Yeah. This is it. And then I went to PC, and people were like, that's the death of you, man. And I will agree with them to an extent because I have thousands of games in my Steam library. Like, they accumulate a lot quicker than people think. But not only have one, I have 2 PCs. I mean, one for gaming, one for streaming. Like, yeah, it's hard to say not PC, but PCs have come so far.
It feels kind of like the end, like you said, it's like the final stop, right? Like, I started with Game Boy, then I went to PlayStation 1, then PlayStation 2, then I went to Xbox 360. Yep. Then I went to PC, but I have a Switch too, and I enjoy the Switch. Yeah. But it's, to me, it's kind of a different type of gaming when I'm playing on my Switch, right? It's more like a games with friends, party games, I guess is kind of what I'll say. Like, we're playing Mario Kart and things like that.
And that's what I love about our technology right now. Is the only ones that are comparable are Xbox and PlayStation, right? They're the only ones that still to this day are butting heads trying to go against each other. PC's like, screw you guys, we're over here. Yep. Nintendo's like, you guys can run that race. We'll have this. And it's like, wow. Like, everyone gets mad that Nintendo doesn't have a console anymore, even though you can dock it and it becomes a console. But I was like, you want them to go up against and butt heads with 2 other platforms? No, I don't. Give me the Nintendo games that I can play. That's all I want.
It goes back to finding that niche, right?
Right.
Like, find your place and do it well.
And Nintendo's done that.
exactly. They've done a great job with the Switch, right?
And
Like
it
it's
starts back, what, at 64? Remember, they came out with an N64, and it wasn't a PlayStation. It wasn't a Sega. You had a weird controller in 64 square bits. Like,
in a lot of ways, I think Nintendo has always been kind of out in the front of innovation, right?
oh, yeah.
Like the Game Boy was something new.
Yeah.
When the Wii came out, that was like, whoa, like we can track motion and things like that.
Yeah,
You
and
know, the
then
Switch, you can just plug it in and all of a sudden it's on my TV, right? Like,
I think,
or I can take it to go. It's
can you imagine if today, okay, let's fast forward and say the Wii never came out. All right, the Wii never came out. Let's go back to 2020 when the pandemic hit. Nintendo launches the Wii, and still today, that technology is still very relevant. But
right.
the cultural impact that system had on everybody in this world, it was in old folk homes. They were using that every day. I mean, kids as young as 1 and 2 to people 90 plus years old were playing this console, and they were playing a demo disc of esports games. They were playing bowling. They were playing golfing.
Yep.
They were doing all this stuff. I was like, imagine if that would have came out now. That would have been an absolutely huge explosion, because that would have been on everybody's radar.
Oh yeah. It's so funny because like even I was just at an event and they pulled a Wii out, right?
Yeah.
Like how that system came out a long time ago.
2007, 8, something like that.
Yeah, and people are still pulling it out and playing it, right?
Or no,
And
2004, 5, something like that. Yeah, something.
I can tell you one of the biggest things that changed my life was I remember when so the original Game Boy Color, right?
Yeah.
First, it was running on batteries.
Yep.
And 2, like you had to buy this little like squiggly light thing.
Yes.
That would you would plug into the side so that you could see the screen.
Yep.
So when they came out with the new version, it was like, oh, it's rechargeable batteries and there's a backlit screen. And I'm like, whoa, oh my gosh, I don't have to
remember. Well, that was the thing with Game Gear. Like Game Gear was backlit, man, and it was color. Remember that? Oh man, eat that, Nintendo. And then Nintendo started coming out with all these crazy things. Like Sega, we owe Sega so much props, because Nintendo would not be where they are today if they didn't push him hard, going into the SNES and changing things. There's not, because they had 95% of the market. They had 95% of the market, and then Sega actually took that away from them. They were actually leading at one point, and it's like, oh, and then everything started happening. And it was just like, thank you, Sega. And Sega doesn't get it enough. Sega, thank you. Even though you're not really around anymore, but you're owned by Nintendo. So thank you, Sega. Favorite game of all time?
You know, I will probably have to say League of Legends.
Yeah.
Just because of what it's meant to my life, right? You know, I've played it since season 1. So we're on.
You started in season 1?
Yeah. So the game came out when I was in college.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. So you would have picked it up, yeah.
Yeah, so that was like, oh, there's this new game and it's free.
Yeah.
That was like the big thing, right? Like it's free. You don't have to pay for it. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll download it for free. Heck yeah, I'll do that.
Yep.
So yeah, I played that since season 1. So I mean, it's been 10, 11 years of my life, right? That I've been playing this game. It's always been the game that me and my friends have kind of gravitated and hung out around.
Right.
And then, you know, from my collegiate coaching standpoint, that's where my coaching career started, was with League of Legends.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are a lot of games that, you know, I think are impactful or that I loved, like the original Kingdom Hearts was great.
Mm-hmm.
Modern Warfare 2, Oblivion.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's actually one that someone hasn't mentioned yet. I totally forgot about Oblivion.
Oh, Oblivion to me was like game changing, because it's like, wait, I can go anywhere?
Yeah.
I don't have to follow. Like,
yep. I don't have loading screens? What's going on here?
I'm like, I can do that. And then, you know, Pokemon, the original Pokemon games. Like, so those are some games that I would, you know, put up in my S tier games. But, you know, I think League of Legends is
your Hall of Fame.
Game Hall of Fame. My gaming Hall of Fame here. Games that have impacted me the most.
Actually, that brings up a question. Are any games in the Smithsonian? You know how like movies go to the Smithsonian? I wonder if there's any games in the Smithsonian.
I wouldn't be shocked if there's like
Mario and like,
I would say even like further back, like the
Pong
Atari stuff. Yeah, like Pong and things like that. I wouldn't be surprised. If you've ever been to the Ford Museum,
Oh yeah.
the one in Detroit, like they have video game consoles in that museum for different decades and things like that. But I don't know if that counts necessarily in the same way.
I got my NES right here.
There you go.
It was hooked up. We were doing Retro Gaming Friday for the show. Then I got my Modern Warfare 2 360s right there. I got the running pad for the Nintendo. I don't dare bust that out.
In my office, I've got the when you bought Modern Warfare 2, if you bought the Prestige Edition, you could get the night vision goggles that came with it.
You could. You got those?
I have them, and I still have the box for the goggles. I've got the box and the like display head that you could put it on. That was like
$300, wasn't it?
It was expensive.
Yeah.
So that was what I wanted for Christmas.
I remember. So I won that from GameStop, and still to this day, I couldn't believe I won. But yeah, I remember they used to have like $400 bundles with that game.
Yeah.
And,
it works too. Like
it does.
My students were like, "Oh, Coach, whoa!" You know, like I'm like, "Try them out where you turn all the lights off in here."
Reminds me of Step Brothers. You see that?
Yes, exactly. Even better. We got them as adults.
Imagine if we had these when we were kids. Even better. We have them when we're adults.
Yeah.
God, that's such a good movie. All right, next question. See, this is how it doesn't work in a minute.
Exactly.
Number 3, first car.
Ooh, so my first car was a 2002 Ford Taurus.
Oh, you had the bug eyes.
Which is silver, and that was a good car. I had that all the way through college. It eventually died on me when I was living down in Houston in the second lane of a 4-lane highway.
Oh no!
Oh, so my transmission gave out. I called my mom up and I'm like, "Hey, just want to let you know I love you because there are cars whizzing by me." She's like, "Get out of the car." I'm like,
I can't.
I'm just waiting for the tow truck right here.
Oh man, I would feel bad about that one.
Yeah, I was like, not trying to figure out. I think I'll be fine. I'm just like,
I love
my car is dead. My second car that I ever got, was an Acura TL. That I drove that thing to like 298,000 miles.
Oh.
Before it needed like $1,000 repair. And at that point I was like, yeah, I probably should just get a new car at this point.
Yeah, it's true.
To put more money into
the worth probably wasn't there, you know.
But man, I loved that car. I drove that car. Yeah, that was a good car.
You essentially drove it until the wheels fell off.
Exactly. Some people get to almost 300,000 miles. They're like, okay, that's a pretty good run.
Yeah, that's a good run.
For any type of vehicle.
Favorite TV show / movie?
Ooh, favorite TV show / movie.
And you can do both if you want.
So my favorite movie is Good Will Hunting.
It's a good movie. It's a good movie. It has not been said yet.
I really appreciate Good Will Hunting. I think there's so many good like acting performances in there. And it's a movie that I think has a lot of rewatchability to it.
Very much so.
There's depth to it. And
it's hard to believe that was their first movie, you know?
Yeah,
like they as kids they wrote that and it was an Academy Award winning movie.
So young.
I know, right?
Watch that movie now and you're like, holy cow, like they're so young.
But I feel like when you have that movie and you're able to cast someone like Robin Williams, though, it just makes it that much better because Robin's going to take a lot of that weight off your shoulders too. And he proved that in many movies. But it was that is such a good movie, and it really opened the door for Ben and Matt in many ways, which is just wild to me that they walk into Hollywood with that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I was like, dang, dude, like I can't even write or imagine writing a story like that, and you guys just happened to do it for your first big flick. I was like, wow. So hats off to anybody that, you know, Good Will Hunting is one of those movies that that one will be in the Smithsonian, like if it's not already. Like that is a good movie.
Like top 10 and IMDb has their like IMDb top 100 movies, right? It's very highly rated. So I feel good about that pick because apparently other people really liked it too.
Yeah, it's good.
So TV shows and series. One of my favorites is How I Met Your Mother.
That's a good show. Very
what I
funny
love
show.
about How I Met Your Mother is like you can just watch an episode and it's funny.
Oh yeah.
You can pick up anywhere in the kind of episodes there. The Office, huge fan of The Office.
The Office is really good
as well. So yeah, I like shows that, if you've got 20, 30 minutes to watch one, you could just pick a random one and you're still going to enjoy it.
And that to me is a good sign of a show. Like Seinfeld is always that for me too. Like Seinfeld, you can just pick up and literally every episode, they don't connect the episodes, so you can just pick up one and watch it and it's great. But How I Met Your Mother, I equate to a different generation as like a different generation's Friends. Because it was on so long, but it was such a star-studded cast. A lot of people didn't know who these people were going in. You knew Doogie Howser. That was it, But all of these people had other shows and other movies, and you just happened to have them together in a cast, and it works so well. And it was just so funny. And it was on for so long.
Harris is amazing.
And Neil Patrick Harris is so good. And the thing was, like, he started his movie career, so you didn't think he was going to go back to the small screen. But that's what I equate to the gold. So, like, a lot of people say back in the 80s, TV was gold. 70s and 80s, that was their gold years of TV. For me, after college, TV became bigger than movies. Like, you had Breaking Bad. You had Justified. You had How I Met Your Mother. Sitcoms and dramatics, like, these series now were better than going and watching a movie. Because you had big-name directors coming down and making these shows, which were just phenomenal.
We had a this or that question in one of our team meetings the other day, and it was like, would you rather like movies or TV shows, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of this, I think, goes back to that binging idea that we talked about. But I'd rather have a great TV show than a great movie, because at the end of a 2.5-2-hour movie, I'm like, man, I want more of this.
Yes.
Whereas most TV shows, you're like, I've got a whole season that I can cut through and watch. So
but to be honest with you, I mean, that's how and that Marvel adapted that idea. One reason why they got away with so much of how they did, and how I hung on by toes and fingernails for 10 years figuring out where this story was going to go and how my Avengers were going to do, and welcoming in random new Avengers every now and then. And I was like, just get me to the end of this. Like, we were at every opening show just because, I am not a huge comic book nerd, but what they did with that line in that movie, I was like, this could be a TV show. And it would be one season long. It would be, 20 episodes. But what they did with the movies was similar to what they do with TV. And I always tell that to people. I was like, look at what Marvel adopted. This is a TV show line or progression. It's just in years and with movies, which are set on a bigger scale. They're just bigger cinematic events.
Well, and that's like, even like we talked about Arcane earlier, right? Arcane came out, and you could have easily have done, we're going to do an animated League of Legends movie, right?
Correct.
And instead, they kind of split it into 3 acts, and each one is the length of a movie in itself, right? So you're getting a lot more content and a lot more of a story than if they had just limited it to, what you can put into a film.
Right. And I mean, that's a huge thing when you can do it right like that. And I feel like Netflix was kind of the big door to that. But yeah, TV, you saw a lot of people coming up and saying, or HBO showed, there was just a binge from 2005 to 2015 that you had these movie shows. Like, these should be movies, but they're TV shows, and they're just so good.
Did you see the Witcher series?
I have not. I have yet to sit down and watch it. I haven't even played the Witcher game. I know very little of the Witcher game.
Witcher 3, I think, you talked about what's people's like game Hall of Fame.
Right.
I think for a lot of people, Witcher 3 falls into that category.
And when that came out, a lot of my streamers that I watched played it. And so that's how I got in with some of the Witcher, and like even the card game in the game. Like, there's very few games inside of a game that could be a standalone game. And the card game that they play in Witcher actually could be its own.
Yeah. I love that game. Yeah.
They literally made a game out of a game in a game. Like, I was like, that's how you know you have a good game on your hands, when a game inside the game becomes its standalone game. So I was like, that's
Project
cool.
Red is one of those studios that when they come out with something, it's going to be really good.
There's very few studios I feel like that do that anymore, but those studios, like for me, it's Red Barrel. And they do Outlast. The first Outlast game was single-handedly one of my favorite games of all time. Like, it was so good and so well done. And then even the DLC that they released was even better than that game. And then the second one, unfortunately, just wasn't that great. But it was like, look what this small studio just created.
Right.
It's so good. And it's like, and now everyone's waiting on bated breath for what's next from them. I was like, is that good or bad for a studio? You know,
I think it's
good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because your
you'd
name's
rather
out there.
have that reputation than not have the reputation.
Right.
You'd rather have people waiting than not waiting, right?
Yeah. I'd rather have people waiting on me than forget about me.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So that to me is, you know, what I feel like is a sign of a good game. When you know those studios like 343, we all knew Halo was coming at some point. Even when they delayed it, people were like, we'll wait. Because we know what's coming, and we'd rather have a good Halo game than a broken Halo game.
And when you have that type of recognition for your studio, like the next thing that CD Projekt Red puts out, people will buy just because they like expect high things for, right?
Exactly.
Like,
it's like when Rockstar with Grand Theft Auto, like they started pumping them, you know, like they're like, we're gonna wait 7 years for another Grand Theft Auto. No, and like when you look at Grand Theft Auto 5 now, it's still massive. It's one of the there's nothing new to it.
Yeah,
nothing. And they're like, we're waiting 5 more years for Grand Theft Auto 6. Excuse me?
What's been interesting about GTA is that how people have shaped the game, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like it's really shaped. Now it's this whole RP community, right? Or like,
well, I mean,
I don't know if that was what it was originally intended to be, right? But
I think
what it's become.
I think they just stumbled upon that because, like, I did it when Grand Theft Auto 3 came out, and for PlayStation 2, it became a third-person thing, right? You became down on the streets rather than above, like Grand Theft Auto 1 and 2 were. And then you had San Andreas, and then you had Vice City, and then you had Grand Theft Auto 4, and then Grand Theft Auto 5. But you found yourself playing your own character. Like, you were, like, giving this guy a voice and stuff. So I was like, it was just something they stumbled on. We're like, dude, we could write a script and make our own thing with this. Like, it's an open world. So they're like, let's cater to this. And it paid off for him in spades. I was like, you guys did it right. All right, question 5. See, we're only 5 through this. Did
we do 4? What was 4?
Yeah, that was your favorite show movie.
Oh, okay, cool.
Number 5, favorite holiday.
Ooh.
Because I have to ask this question because tomorrow is Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving by the way, and for everyone who's listening to this, it's not going to be Thanksgiving, but happy Thanksgiving and upcoming holidays because I feel like this will be out next week or 2 weeks. So happy holidays, everyone.
So I want to say my favorite holiday has probably now become Christmas. And it's really not so much about like the presents and things like that. It's, you know, my brother lives he lives in Boston. So he lives a decent ways away.
Right.
But he makes sure to, you know, he's usually home
for Christmas. Yeah.
You know, COVID willing, you know, last year was a little bit weird with things like that. But it's nice to just have a time where my entire family can come back together and spend time together. So yeah, I'll probably go with Christmas for that one. I'm trying to think, are there any other holidays that I'm really big on? I've always liked Thanksgiving, not so much for Thanksgiving itself, but my family has kind of had a tradition where the day after Thanksgiving, those 2 days we've gone to Ford Field for the high school.
Oh yeah, for the championships. Yeah.
Yeah, and we stay there. We watch all 8 games for the 8 different divisions.
That's
and we
cool.
spend the night in between it. And it's just, you know, it's about spending time with your family, right? We're in the stands for 10 hours a day with football in front of us, you know, just hanging out and spending time.
And for me, it's the same. Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday. Only for me, it's a little bit different. It is family related, but I mean, October and November is deer camp. Like we set up deer camp. We go every weekend. We go bow hunting and then rifle hunting. And then that leads into Thanksgiving where we see everybody and then we don't see everybody until Christmas again.
Right.
But that was where I saw a lot of my family was leading up to Thanksgiving. And it didn't matter what side of the family it was. You know, you're hunting with my dad's side or my mom's side. And then everyone got together on Thanksgiving, whether it was my mom's side or dad's side. And we saw all the cousins. We played video games. We watched the horrible Lions game. And then, you know, we go on our way.
Since this is pre-recorded, are they going to win this year or
no, dude?
Prediction here?
No, dude. I here's the thing. Years ago when they were saying take the Thanksgiving game from the Lions. I was the first one in line saying, no, do not take that game from them. They invented it. This is theirs, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward 5-6 more years. I'm sitting here now saying, you know what? Strip them of it for 1 year. See how that goes for them. Let's see if they get their act together if we finally pull this from them, because it is so embarrassing. And don't get me wrong, I wouldn't be upset if it was 1 year. I wouldn't be upset if it was 5 or 10 years. But 63 years, man, like the pain of being a Lions fan is so real, and people just don't understand. And they'll complain, oh, Tom Brady went to Tampa Bay. You've won 6 Super Bowls with the dude. Yeah. We haven't even won a playoff game. Like, we have 2 playoff victories in 63 years. We haven't even sniffed a Super Bowl. And it's all when the Ford family bought them. Strip the Ford family of a Thanksgiving game and see what happens. I guarantee you things will start working again. That's my outcome. I don't think they win. I picked them the last 2 weeks to win. We've proven that we can't beat a bad team in Pittsburgh, and we've proven that we can't beat a broken team in Cleveland. We are not going to win.
You know, I've got faith in Andy Dalton and the Bears.
Who would have thought we would ever say that?
Overcome Tim Boyle and the Lions this week.
Whatever happened to Blau? Like, Blau just got shuffled back to the back more.
Oh, man, you can only keep Tim Boyle down for so long, okay? You know, eventually cream rises, and that's Tim Boyle.
We are now at the point in the Lions' career that we are paying a guy to come kick for us on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
I never thought we would ever see that. Like, I thought for sure we will kick field goals for days, but we can't even do that anymore.
Still kicking field goals out there.
Why couldn't have we signed him? What was the problem in signing Prater back?
Needed more money for Tim Boyle.
Apparently. So there's our Thanksgiving predictions.
Watch, Tim Boyle just balls.
He goes out, yeah.
Yeah, just goes crazy.
I mean,
350, 400 yards.
Swift ran for 150 yards last week, and we still lost. I was like, man, I'm done with this. All right, number 6. What is your favorite group or genre of music?
Ooh, so I listen to a little bit of everything.
Okay.
The only thing that I'm really not that into is like screamo metal. Not really my thing.
We can't be friends anymore.
I'm sorry. And like super like ballady country.
Yeah.
I feel like country now is pretty much just like pop and rock music with a twang.
Correct.
But like some of the older stuff is like really ballady. That's not like my stuff. If I had to pick like a favorite, I'm a big like, you know, top 100 type person. Like if I'm listening to music on my liked songs, it's probably like late 90s, early 2000s pop and boy bands and, you know, everything that came with that kind of era.
I mean, that would be me too. I mean, to be honest with you, I wasn't supposed to like boy bands when I was growing up because I was a new metal kid, but I loved Backstreet Boys and 98 Degrees and NSYNC. It was just, I was a closet fan because I had
Backstreet Boys is my favorite band of all time. So I'm not afraid to admit it. People who know me are unsurprised that I would say that.
We're going to have a feud with that one because I'm an NSYNC kid. So
okay. Hey, you know what?
I'm a JT dude. I love me some JT.
Very close, just barely ahead.
They're friends now. What I do love the fact is that they're together on TikTok now more than they ever were back in the days when they were competing. I love the fact that they make fun of each other and in both sides of it. I was just like, yes, this is the NSYNC and Backstreet Boys I want more of when they can just poke fun at themselves with what was happening.
I went to a Backstreet Boys concert like I was near the end of my college year, so like maybe 6-7 years ago.
Yeah, I think I remember that tour.
Yeah, it was in Detroit.
Yeah.
And I was like watching them out there. I'm like, these guys are like in their mid-30s and they're literally dancing to every song.
They're still killing it.
2 hours, they're out there, full choreography. I'm like, that looks exhausting.
Yeah, it's not easy. And a lot of people would always give them so much crap, but I was like, these guys aren't just like singing. Like, you know, they're not. They're singing,
dance and sing at the
same
time.
2 hours of dance routines and and they're doing this every night. Like, hello? Like, yeah, it's better than going out and just like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Every certain type of music, there's certain things that, you know, you have to overcome. like screamo, and like I can't imagine going out and screaming every day. And to be honest with you, you don't see singers lasting very long in that scene anyway.
Right.
But like, yeah, like I can't, I don't know, man. I can't be an entertainer like that. We went down to Grand Rapids to see my buddy, and I don't know how you're on the road for that long and do stuff like that. Like it's
And what
something.
happens if like you stress out your voice one night, like, and you still got to go out and try to like
Do it
sing.
again. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just gotta adjust. Favorite snack during a session of gaming,
Ooh, favorite snack during
if
gaming?
any at all, because I know some don't. Like I don't snack during gaming.
I think so. My favorite snacks, we'll go that way.
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for popcorn.
Yeah.
Love popcorn. Especially like movie theater type popcorn where I can just douse it with the butter. That is the spot. Right
We have
there.
gone during COVID. We went to the movie theater just to get popcorn and come back and bring it back and watch it, whatever's streaming. And they're like, yeah, we get it, you know, because the concession stands were closed for so long. But we were like, we need that movie theater popcorn. And so we went and got movie theater popcorn, and I can't remember what we were watching, but we brought it back and we watched it to LA.
You know, I think you talked about, you know, gaming being a way you decompress, and that's true for me too.
Oh, yeah.
But like movies have always been kind of a way,
Yes.
you know, the actual act of going to the theater, getting the biggest bucket of popcorn I can, just dousing this thing in butter, and then just focusing on only a movie.
Correct.
In a dark.
You're lost. You're
Yes.
not anywhere. You're in this land of whatever this movie is portraying, and you're there for however long. And to me, and this is something I've gone into detail with many people, including my wife. If you recall back to when The Dark Knight released, there was or no, not The Dark Knight, but no, it was The Dark Knight, the third Batman. Dark Knight
was the second one, right?
Yeah. What was the third one? I can't remember the name of it.
Was it Beyond? What was?
No, it was Batman of some sort. But anyway, that is when they had a shooting in a theater.
I think it was the Dark Knight. I think it was the second one that they had the shooting for, right?
No, it was the third one because he donned the Joker mask, but it was the third one. It wasn't the second one because the Dark Knight one we were still in Minot, North Dakota, and we went and saw that, and it was the third one because we were living here at the time.
Dark Knight Rises.
Dark Knight Rises. There you go.
Yeah.
So that and the shooting happened in the theater. All right, so. And it's not that I never had felt something in that way. Like shootings impact people, or mass tragedies in general impact people in very different ways. 9/11, I was a sophomore. It impacted me differently than many different people. I was seeing something that, you know, no one had seen before. But for me as a kid in high school, it was a learning lesson because, you know, you're not so much impacted that many other people were impacted that way. I remember going home from school and watching the Columbine events unfolding. Didn't really impact me much other than, you know, obviously everyone's saddened about the events and what's happening. Fast forward to The Dark Knight Rises, they had that shooting in the theater. I literally was crying. And the reason why that I broke it down in my head was that is my escape. When you go to a movie theater, I'm not worried about who's sitting next to me. I'm not worried about what's happening around me. And for me, I'm just in this world where I'm disconnected from my phone. I'm disconnected from everything. I'm enjoying 2.5 hours of a movie. And for someone to take that away from me, that is something that impacted me more than those other events that I had mentioned. And it really, really saddened me. And it also worried me because I didn't want something like this to become something that was going to be, or take that away from me, because that is my escape. And we love going to the movie theaters. And that is just something that I will always hold dear. We are movie files. So like when that happened, that brought me to a situation where I was just like, I don't want to have to worry about going in a movie theater. And, you know, it's the same thing as like parents will say, I don't want to have to worry sending my kids to school. Right. Or like many people be like, I don't want to have to worry going to work. That's how that impacted me. And I was just like, I have such a deep love for movies and going to a movie theater and escaping. I didn't realize it at the time, but when something like that happens, you realize just how important that little, you know, something is. Yeah. So that was a huge thing for me. And thankfully, you know, nothing like that has ever donned its ugly head again. But that was like, man, I just never realized when you take something like that away, even during COVID, we couldn't go to the movie theater.
Yeah.
And me and my wife make it a point to go every weekend to a movie. And when we couldn't do that, I knew the streaming services were going to do this at some point. It's just not the same.
It's not.
It is not at all.
It's not, because you're getting out of, like, to me, even when you're watching it at home, like, you're still in kind of like your environment, right?
Yeah.
Like when you get up and physically get away, like you're disconnecting, unplugging from your norm.
Yeah, exactly. And that is something we missed truly. And it was, it brought it back a little bit with the movie theater popcorn. We were like, yeah, we got to go get a bucket of this. So, but thankfully, we're getting to the point, and to be honest with you, the silver lining of COVID is those movie theaters are the cleanest they've ever been. So, and we've said that many times with me and the anchor that is on the floor with me. She's actually a movie critic. She gets all the stuff, and she actually gets everything early. And she was like, yeah, those theaters are clean as hell. I was like, yeah, they are. Mouse and keyboard or controller?
A mouse and keyboard. It goes back to the PC gaming.
Yeah.
There's still there's certain games where for a long time I would still pull out a controller for it.
Yeah.
Like when I would try to play first person shooters, just because I grew up on.
Still use this for COD. I still use this for Halo.
Yeah.
I use it for Fortnite, but I do not use it for Warzone. I'm now in the weird transition of which one do I prefer. But like there's certain games that I use this on that just feel natural. Rocket League, you have to use a mouse or controller because mouse and keyboard is just not.
Yeah, it's
right.
That's like the only game that I would pull a controller out for. Still is Rocket League. The other ones, a few years ago, I was like, man, I'm just gonna force myself to try to learn this, mouse and keyboard, right?
I did that too.
Tear off the Band-Aid.
I did that too, but with Fortnite, when I started getting deep into it before my pro run, I was like, I can't do this. There's too many buttons, dude. Like, I'm so lost. So I got used to it with the triggers on the back, and that's how Scuff really took off. Was you had more options to build, and then it got different to how aim assist and how much advantage that mouse and keyboard has, all that jazz. But
yeah, my Fortnite team that won the championship and who's in first place right now at Muskingum, their kind of star player, he plays with the controller too.
Yeah,
the paddles on it.
Yep.
So
there you go, kids. If you're listening to this, you don't have to have mouse and keyboard to be good at Fortnite. I'm telling you that. In fact, when we went to the first Fortnite event, there were some kids in the finals with controllers. I was one of the only kids using a controller. I didn't make it to the finals, unfortunately, but there were some kids that had controllers and giving those mouse and keyboard kids run for their money. So enough practice, you can be good with a controller. Trust me. All right, number 9. This one's out of left field. All right, this is kind of one of those classic Reddit questions. Would you rather be attacked by one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
Horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
Yeah.
I guess I'd probably take the horse-sized duck. I just feel like with 100 of them, like
you're outnumbered.
It's overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
Like, I can't fight off. I might, even if I'm like, I got off 50 of them, right? Like, there's still 50 more coming at me.
I mean, to be honest with you, I've heard the most creative answers for this stupid question. Like Purdy said he would climb a tree, get away from the 100 ducks or 100 horse-sized ducks. And then, like, Charlie from Lazarus was saying, he'll horse whisper the one duck. I was like, all right. A lot of people, I will say, it has swayed in favor of the one horse-sized duck.
The way I thought of it in my head, I'm like, if I'm in the MMA cage with one of the, what are my chances of coming out alive more likely with? And maybe I get lucky against one horse-sized duck
rather than
versus I don't think I can hold off 100 of them. Like,
I can just see you now running around the cage with 100 of those things trolling you.
Yeah, nope.
All right, we are reaching the last little bits of our podcast here, which is now 2 hours and 20 minutes long. This is gonna have to be a 5-parter. That's historic. Anywhere in the world, brother, where are you going?
Ooh. So I love to travel.
Yeah.
I feel like, when people ask me what's your number one piece of advice? And it's to travel.
Travel.
Because I think not only do you learn a lot about other people when you travel,
Correct.
I think you learn a lot about yourself.
Yep.
At the same time. And so I've been to Europe quite a bit. I've been fortunate to have 2 longer trips in Europe to kind of go to a bunch of different countries there. So if I could go somewhere now, I think I would try to go to a whole different type of place. So I would like to go to like one of the Asian countries. So like either Japan or Seoul, South Korea, or China. I feel like one of those places, because it's going to be very different than what I've experienced before. And that's kind of what's exciting to me about travel, is you do get to see a different side of the world, right? And different ways that people live, and the experiences and things like that. So I think just because I've never been to any place like that, that would be where I'd like to go.
100%. A lot of people, actually the majority of people in these podcasts, have said Japan. And I don't know. I mean, for me, I do want to visit Japan. The number one spot for me, if I had to go somewhere other than Northern Michigan, because I love it here. I love the 4 seasons. I love, spring, summer. Fall's my favorite season. Winter can get a little bit long at times, but we're hockey players.
Right.
Give me some ice. I want to play some puck. But we went to Hawaii for a wedding. Oh my goodness! Like, if I could go somewhere, that would be the place. Like, I would have no problem being homeless on Hawaii. Like, it is really, really nice. We do. We love to travel too. We have not been necessarily out of the states so much, but we've been around a lot of the states. We are looking to go to Thailand next October, which I think will be really cool. We're just kind of learning. We don't want to be the dumb Americans, if you will. We don't want to go to a country and insult them and, just come in and be like, here we are, entertain us. Like, no, we want to go and soak in their culture. We want to see what they do and do what they do. We want to live and see how those people appreciate their everyday life. And I think that's the biggest thing in traveling. I haven't been to Europe yet. That isn't a thing that I really want to do. I'm Czech and Irish. That is my big background. And I would love to go see the mother country of Czech Republic. From what I've heard, Prague is amazing. But, I don't need to live there. I just want to go visit and see things. I would like to go see Russia. I would like to go see a lot of things around this world because it's different. We are very lucky in a lot of aspects here in the United States, but I really want to see the rest of what this world is doing. I want to go to Australia. I would love to go to Antarctica, even though there's nothing there, but I would love to go see it.
I'm with you. Like, even when I travel to places, like, I'm not usually drawn to like the huge touristy type of things. I like to get kind of off the beaten path a little bit.
Yeah.
And, actually try to give myself time in places, right? So like when I last went to Europe, I'd be like, okay, we're going to try to get like at least like 3 days in each place if we can, so that, it's like I actually can get a feel. I'm not rushing through the place.
Yep.
Right. And going to do that.
That's exactly
makes a lot of sense for me for like your podcast guests, because a lot of gaming culture and gaming history came out of Japan. And so that makes a lot of sense for me.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense because to me, they're technologically advanced. They're always a few steps ahead of us when it comes to technology, and they know what's on the cusp. Like, Tokyo itself is just a beacon of technology. South Korea is the same way. So when you look at Seoul, like, they have the fastest internet in the world for the cheapest price in the world. Like, why can't we have that? Like, I would love to see those things.
I love Northern Michigan too. I'm glad you mentioned it, because every year, me and my buddies, we do a camping trip up north, and it's really a 4-day trip usually, but it's a no electricity type.
Yeah.
So like we go up there, we find a rustic campground, hang out and go kayaking and fishing and do all the things outdoors. And it's just nice to, once again, kind of unplug and disconnect.
And see, for me, I grew up with that. I never appreciated it until it was gone. And that's all, that's always the case. You never appreciate something until it's gone. And when I moved to North Dakota is a flat, barren land of farmers. There's not trees, there's no woods, there's no hills. So after 2 years of spending there, I was like, I want to go back home. And me and my buddy in high school, we swore we'd never come back to Cadillac. And I'm back in Cadillac. I was like, my family's here. This is what I know, and this is what I love. Yeah, I did all the things, but I didn't know how much I appreciated those things when I was a kid. And then when you experience things like Chicago or Milwaukee or Minneapolis. When we played hockey, we went to all those big cities, and you start saying, well, geez, I did have something that I, didn't necessarily realize I liked so much. Yeah, I like visiting those cities, but I don't want to be in those cities for the most part, and I just want to, that's why I like Northern Michigan.
The same way I felt about Grand Rapids, right? Like, I don't think I really appreciated Grand Rapids until I left.
Right.
I got growing up in Lowell, it was the only thing I knew, right? Like, I didn't have other places or other things to compare Grand Rapids to. And the more of the world and different places I've seen, I'm like, wow, Grand Rapids is a really nice place.
It really is. And like I said, like I told you earlier, is like Grand Rapids to me doesn't feel like those big towns, but like you said, it's the second biggest town in Michigan. Yeah. So yeah, it really is something I love. And again, that's what people draw to. So we got Chris off the hot seat. He's done 2:25:04. You, sir, are now the longest record holder for the longest One Up XP Show podcast. And I enjoyed every second of this, man. Thank you so much for sitting down and talking everything under the sun and video games with me, man. I really do appreciate it. I look forward to what you're doing at Grand Valley. We will be down for a visit, of course, as we have
Please come down and visit.
We have the series now that we're starting to do seasonally, that we look at the campuses. We were down and visited Carl. We'll have Oakland on the show. We have as well as Ferris. We have NMC on the show. We'll also have Siena Heights on the show to check out their campuses. And once we get these next wave of podcasts out, we'll have areas like Grand Valley. We have Davenport coming up for the podcast. We have Aquinas coming up. So Riley, and like we got everybody coming up here. So we have more colleges around Michigan that we do that we'll have on. So thank you again, brother, for the time. I appreciate it. Again, 2.5 hours. I don't know if anyone's going to beat you. I think that one's going to hold up.
Like I said, I really enjoyed being here. Yeah. And I'm hoping that we get to talk again, and I'll see you again soon.
For sure, brother. We'll get you back on once the season gets up and running, and we'll talk like everything that's going on, get an update with the campus and everything that is Grand Valley State. Go Lakers!
Go Lakers. Anchor up.